What's a mook?
A mook? What's a mook?
You can't call me a mook.
I can't?
No.
I give you mook.
Hey, another episode of the Mooks. Episode
Hey,
11.
You calling me a mook?
I'm calling you a
You
mook.
can't call me a mook.
If there's anybody I'm going to call a mook, it's you, mook.
We get to this big
Hey,
fight.
hey, wait. This is coming from a mook. We can call our own.
Yeah,
That's the
that's
rule.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, you're back here with the movies with the Mooks. I guess we're the self-proclaimed Mooks. But we're here today to do a special episode of Oscar Academy Awards recap 2025.
Yeah, I guess this is our first Oscar episode. I don't know if this will be like a yearly tradition, but...
Yeah, maybe. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I've hardly watched the Oscars for the last several years because I've just been completely tuned out. I haven't been into most of the movies, and I haven't been into I feel like the Oscar show was on a real downswing for quite a while.
Yeah, this is the first one I feel like I've tuned in for a while. I think I had a buddy of mine, he texted me shortly after the Oscars a couple of years ago. My buddy texted me the Will Smith slap moments after it happened. And I think I might have then I might have watched the rest of the Oscar night just to see if there was anything else that would even peak that. But also, I don't know, a lot of times it's actually hard to find for someone like I guess like you and me, we don't have cable TV and stuff. So a lot of the times it's hard for me to even find a way to access it. I'm usually scrambling around at the last minute, and then I can't find a streamable source. So I usually then just give up on it. But
that's one of the things that's changed, interestingly enough, over the last several years. Hey, is a lot of people just don't have cable anymore. I don't have it. I don't think a lot of people have it. So it's where do you go to watch?
And I know that's obviously that's had a big effect on the Oscars numbers. It actually seems like, God, I think every year, I think they break a record for lowest viewing numbers.
It seems like it's going down. Yeah. And I can't say I'm surprised. I've heard a lot of people just be like, yeah, I don't fucking care about the Oscars anymore. And frankly, I don't blame them. I've been in that mood too. On the other hand, what did you actually think of this show? Because you watched it live this time. And then I didn't get to watch it live because I was working, but I did watch the full show the night after. I downloaded a copy.
I found a site just in time. I didn't even... I don't think I was even able to really see any of the pre-red carpet kind of stuff. I just managed to find a site just before the thing started. I have a feeling maybe your motivation might have been like mine, which was that the main reason I think I chose to tune in for this Oscars is because I've always been a huge Conan O'Brien fan.
That's exactly why I watched it.
I could not... Weirdly, okay, I don't know about you. I was convinced that this wasn't his first time hosting, but it was.
Oh, I was pretty sure it was his first time.
Yeah, well, I guess the thing was that I think there was a number of times in the past where he got very, very close. And I think at the last minute, for whatever reason, he would end up getting replaced with somebody else, which is why I thought that he had hosted before. He's hosted other events. I think he's hosted almost everything else. I think he's hosted the Emmys and maybe even the Grammys.
Lots of other awards shows for sure.
Yeah. I don't know what took so long because this to me.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
Yeah. And I feel bad because, the show is what it was, but I think, Conan, did his best, with what he was kind of given to work with. I hope they don't, look at the viewing numbers and think, well, Conan was the problem. We're not going to have him host again. Because I actually would love to see him recur. They need to have a reoccurring, classic host that we become comfortable and familiar with.
Yeah, for sure. And, I did feel like watching this, I enjoyed some of the bits that he had going on and some of the jokes were funny and stuff. Although I did feel like it seems to me like there wasn't as much of kind of those gags and little bits and jokes and stuff as there have been in previous shows. I seem to recall, one of my favorites was Seth MacFarlane. I thought was really good when he did it. Mm-hmm. Or when Hugh Jackman did it, I thought was really funny.
Yeah.
And And I just seem to recall they had more kind of stuff going on, more like little gags. And
well, I
things
wonder,
like that.
I'm trying to remember like how long ago some of those guys hosted, because yeah, I think a lot of it is just the politics of, the thing is, it's like those other guys that you're talking about, I think was at a time when people were, it was still an appealing prospect to host the Oscars in those times. While in the last, I'd say at least like 5 or 6 years, it's like it's almost like a death sentence.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that job.
I don't even know who's done it the last several years. Although, well, Chris Rock, obviously.
Chris Rock did it. I think famously this is kind of another sort of example, kind of like with Conan, where somebody was close and then for political reasons, they replaced them. But I remember Kevin Hart was like so close, like he was supposed to host, and then I think it was and like an old
and then they found a tweet from 15 years ago that
yeah. Well, I mean, but maybe they saved his life, because if that was the Oscar year that Chris Rock hosted, like I don't know if Kevin Hart could have like actually recovered from a slap from Will Smith. It would have just killed him. So
yeah, I don't think that was the same year though. Actually,
okay.
I'm trying to remember who ended up replacing him though.
Yeah, but, I know that there was a disastrous year as far as just hosting goes, where it was Anne Hathaway and James Franco co-hosting, right. And that was just like really I felt really bad for Anne Hathaway. Like she was trying. James Franco just seemed like stoned the whole time. But it just, there was just zero charisma. Neither one wanted to really be there. So it's like, there's just been a lot of these like kind of weird hosts. I know like Steve Martin's hosted, I think, a few times, and even also co-hosted. He's great. Yeah. Like, I don't know why they don't, again, there's these people like Steve Martin and Conan O'Brien. I feel like are a shoe-in.
Those guys.
Yeah. Were you like me, like where I'm trying to remember when he kind of passed the gauntlet and sort of retired. They kind of brought him back after a number of years, I think, when they were desperate. But in my day growing up, Billy Crystal was the big Oscar host.
Yeah,
like he would do it like every year.
Tons.
Yeah.
And then didn't like who's that famous? Like Jimmy Carter? No,
Jimmy Kimmel? Jimmy Fallon?
The guy, Johnny Carson.
He
used to do it all the time.
Yeah, Johnny
right?
Carson, and I guess probably the original classic host was maybe Bob Hope back in the day. He used to host them a lot. I think it was like Bob Hope, and then Carson. Carson did it for a long time, and then I think Billy Crystal kind of took over from there. And then every now and then they would have it, like they would switch it. They would try something new, but it's weird. It's like a lot of people can't hack it. Like it takes a certain type of, I don't know, personality to be like the right host, it seems. So I hope they bring back Conan, I think he's like,
see him go again.
Yeah. He's like in his like early 60s now. Like he could happily just do it. The question is will he want to? I don't know how much he enjoyed it, but
I don't know. I mean, maybe if he had like more, I kind of felt like it seemed like he had a little bit of a stick up his ass. Like maybe he like had to kind of tone things down or work within certain guidelines, because it didn't seem like totally unhinged. I feel like he would have, if he had just been able to do what he wanted to do, it would have been
absolutely
something else. And probably a lot better, frankly.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that just shows you just how
like a little bit like watered down Conan to me.
But I think that goes to show how intense that job is, because it is very hard to cage Conan O'Brien. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so the fact that like he had to kind of be to a degree on his best behavior, it would have been probably a little bit better if it could have been looser, but also it's just those Oscar audiences. That's a really tough crowd. Like nobody's really there to laugh. They're all like, am I getting this Oscar or not? My career really depends on it. So it's like, that's the thing is I think the people at home laugh a lot more at the shticks and the jokes that these hosts do than what you actually hear in the theater, which is like, almost sounds like a deafening silence.
Sometimes it can be a little bit awkward.
I think Conan even like, because Conan, he's always really good at the self-deprecating jokes. And I think like he even, he would make a point of when his jokes would fail or weren't really getting like the laughs. And then sometimes that would actually save it and be like the funny joke.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love Conan. I'm glad he got it. I wish he was able to have hosted it earlier, but hopefully hopefully they'll bring him back. Like I don't know, like who like. Well, it'd be interesting to see who they get next year.
I will say this too is like to me this year, I don't know how you felt, but I felt like this year was a little bit more back to form in that it was a step up from previous years or the impression.
Yeah, well, it seems like the money was bad. Like there was. It was one or two of those COVID lockdown years.
Yeah,
they had so little money. It felt like it was like, some like public access like little stage, and I was just sort of like, whoa. Yeah.
Well, and they had to do some of them where, they didn't have as many people there and stuff. It's kind of like watching sports without an audience, right? It was like, okay, we've like put together this little thing, but because everybody's got we've got all these like, capacity limitations on who can be in the room and stuff. They did it pretty it was pretty lackluster for a couple of those years. Yeah. Yeah. But this did feel back to form at least to some extent, not completely, but
it's, I think the rough part was just, I know a lot of people said that this was that 2024 was kind of the year of the bombs. I don't know if you had heard much about that, but just like the majority of like just the big, and I guess maybe I'm even going outside of the Oscar movies, but this was apparently just not a good year for Hollywood in general. A lot of basically like big budget films just kind of bombed, and then I guess it kind of just made for a weird kind of Oscar year in that, for me at least, a lot of the like best picture nominations were movies that I literally had never heard of until the Oscar nominations were announced. And then I just started discovering basically half of these Oscar movies that I never even heard of before.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's what my experience had been for the last several years. And then this year, for some reason, or in 2024, I was like, it must have been like October, November or something. And I was just kind of scrolling through the list of movies that was playing locally. And I was like, this one sounds interesting. This other one sounds kind of interesting. I'd go see this one. And then it was like, for some reason, I was like, this is the first time I've actually been interested in seeing a bunch of these movies for something. I don't know if it was because the concepts of the movies were better or if something just snapped in my brain and I was kind of suddenly more open and interested to going to the theater again. I don't know what the heck happened. But I ended up going to see quite a few of them. And I don't know, I made a little list here of some of the stuff that I wanted to talk about, some of the ones that I've seen, and some of them that weren't even nominated, but that I just thought were movies that came out this year that might be worth
that. Yeah, that actually could be an interesting conversation to talk about, maybe movies that should have been nominated for the Oscars that maybe for whatever, I don't know, political reasons, or that's a whole other discussion, is there's a whole new sort of checkbox list of what even qualifies as an Oscar movie now.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to start seeing more and more of like the best movies of the year not get nominated, just probably be just for the fact that they won't, qualify for the rules that are now set in place.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, I'd love to, we should start talking about some of these movies. I definitely think you've seen more of them than I have. I've seen, for the best picture ones, I've probably seen actually a little bit less than half.
Why don't we just run down a list quickly of like, what are some of the ones you watched last year and just ones that come to the top of your head?
So, there's probably only one movie that I watched, for the sake of being aware that it was an Oscar movie and that I wanted to kind of check it out for this review. All the other ones I watched was long before they were getting any nominations. So the ones that I did watch was simply just because I wanted to see them. Mm-hmm. And so those movies would have been Dune 2, Anora, The Substance, and oh man, is that, no, I feel like there's one other one. Well, I guess and then maybe I guess the one that I watched after the fact.
Oh, well, Nosferatu, you and I went and saw.
We did see that. I guess I forget. I guess because it did get a few nominations, but it didn't get any big nominations.
Right.
But
it might have actually been. Wasn't it nominated for Best Picture?
No.
Really?
No. You can blame Nickel Boys for that.
I did watch that recently.
Oh, you
actually.
did? Okay. See, the funny thing was, like, I think Nickel Boys had like one nomination and it was like Best Picture, but I don't know if it was nominated for anything else. Maybe one other thing. Maybe like original screenplay or something. I don't know, or adapted screenplay. But okay, this was one thing I wanted to actually just bring up before we jump into these movies, because what do you think about this? I think that it was a big mistake when they changed the Best Picture category to being 10 titles instead of 5. Because it's the only category that does that. And I know that they were maybe thinking like, oh, it's a way to make it more diverse. But I'm like, yeah, but everything else is 5 nominations.
Right.
So it's like you keep seeing the same kind of titles over and over again. And then you get to 10 and then it just throws in a whole bunch of extra movies that to me really feel like they don't even have any place being there. And it's almost kind of embarrassing and awkward because it's like you kind of know it's not going to go to the movie that doesn't have any other Oscar nominations. I mean, maybe one day we'll see that, but it seemed pretty obvious that the Best Picture was going to be one of the 5 big movies that had a whole ton of other nominations. So what do you think, though? Do you like that there's 10 movies nominated now? Do you think it should be 5?
I kind of do, just because it makes it harder to guess which one's going to win to some degree. You feel like, oh, okay, there's kind of more possibility for I guess a surprise. But and I do feel like the Best Picture, then that category kind of summarizes more of the movies that are kind of being celebrated for that year, kind of the top 10 movies that are being celebrated. And I also always say too that it's not necessarily so much about whether or not the movie wins the Oscar, but whether or not it was nominated. Like if you go through year by year, it can be nice to look at the list of Best Picture nominees and get a sense of what was really good that came out that year, what was really being recognized, rather than just looking at the winners. You know what I mean? Because oftentimes I feel like it's the other nominees that are better than the one that won.
Do you have a list of the 10 movies that were nominated this year?
For this year, yeah, I'll quickly run it down. Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked.
Yeah. So just even from like the order you gave, maybe other than The Substance. Oh, I love The Substance. That's probably my favorite movie of the year. Yeah. But I could also understand why that could have been a movie that could have even have not ever have gotten any. Like, I'm actually surprised it got the Oscar nominations it did. But to me, it's like when you said that list, I felt like the first 5 titles you gave were the relevant ones, and then those last 5 titles
were the extras.
Were the ones that were not supposed to be there.
Yeah,
basically.
So you're kind of saying like, they're irrelevant, and like, there's no point in having a top 10 list.
Well, I mean, I guess because otherwise you could kind of just make the same argument for why don't we have 10 people nominated for Best Actor, and 10 for Best Supporting Actor, and 10 for Director, right? I guess that's the thing. I'm just sort of like everything else is 5. Some things are even less than 5. I noticed like for makeup and special effects, a lot of times it's like 3 titles. And to me, that's like,
I know.
That's like a disrespect, I feel, to just the industry of saying like, hey, we just don't want to even really like shine a light on special effects movies or something. I don't know. It's,
sometimes that'll be for like something like Best Original Song though too, right? If there just weren't any movies that had original songs written for them, I've noticed that. Oh, do they not? Do they not do 5? I thought that they usually try to do 5. They
try.
I'm just saying, like, I think there's been some years where, you're right. There was only like 3 nominees for a certain category, and I think it was just because there weren't a whole lot of options.
I could be wrong on this, but I actually think that actually might be an Academy rule. I don't know if I remember ever a year where there was more than 3 like makeup effect titles. Like, I just feel like
wasn't there more this year? Makeup, hair and makeup.
Well, I know The Substance was one.
This one had 5.
Did it have 5?
Wicked, The Substance, Nosferatu, Amelia Perez, and
makeup and hairstyling. But is that? I don't know if that's is that the only category that falls for makeup effects?
I think so.
Because I feel like hair and makeup was a category that's existed for like ages. But I know that
it's been there around for a long time.
So the one I'm talking about is like, so the special makeup award first happened in 1981 with An American Werewolf in London. That's the one I'm talking about.
So it was specifically special effects makeup? Or
I believe so. I believe it's unless they're mixing those with hair. But I mean, hair and makeup, I almost feel I could be completely wrong with this. Maybe that is just maybe there wasn't any hair and makeup award before the 80s, but I was always thinking of like the real like kind of prosthetic-y kind of either prosthetic makeup or even like kind of puppetry could even fall into that category.
Yeah.
But it's because those movies are never really Oscar bait kind of films that they usually just kind of throw in like a few like they're usually given to like a period piece, or at least the nominations will be like a period piece or a biopic where they're like turning somebody into like a famous person. It's, you know what I mean? Like it would rarely be sort of a popcorn blockbuster movie, even if it has the best makeup effects.
Right.
But well, anyways, should we talk about some of the movies?
On that subject, I think we should talk about The Substance, because we're essentially talking about it right now.
So yeah, The Substance, I think is well, all I can say is it's my kind of movie.
Yeah.
I don't blame it for not really getting. I think it got maybe 1 or 2 Oscar wins, maybe, but I'm amazed that it even was nominated because it's such an anti-Hollywood film. The big upset.
I mean, it really kind of is, right? Because like you know, it starts specifically like on the Hollywood star, and kind of like shows the disintegration of it and stuff. And, that's, I mean, kind of one of the. It's a really interesting and artistically expressive visual metaphor for what this character is going through, and that's also kind of such a prevalent theme within Hollywood, you know, like the attempt to kind of hang on to your luster as a star.
Well, and to me, it's like, it just seems like maybe the most iconic one. Like, I think it's more of a movie that will gain more notoriety in time. Like, as the movie lives on, it'll be more of a classic, and I think it'll be far more remembered than most of the movies.
I would think so too. Like, to me, and I totally share your opinion. That was my favorite movie of last year, so yeah, good one to start talking about. I thought it was like the directing of it was very visionary, but also like it was artistic and kind of like I don't want to say pretentious. It was it was suitable, you know. It was very suitable for what it was trying to do, but it was also like very expressive and kind of different.
I think it was very self-aware, which could, in the wrong hands, could maybe come off as pretentious. And but I don't think it did. To be honest, I was enjoying the movie so much that it actually was like, when I enjoy a movie as much as The Substance, it's a very rare thing in this day and age for me to enjoy and connect to a new movie the way I did with that.
Yeah.
But it was also making me so nervous that I was like, while watching the movie, I was like, oh, please don't fuck up. Please don't like toy with my emotions and then turn to shit in like the second half. And because I was enjoying it so much, I was just sort of like, be a good movie. Like, don't because sometimes you can watch movies like that and it can turn out to be style over substance, and you're like, oh fuck, like there was opportunities there and they didn't really go and let it blossom into the great thing it was. And to me, it's like, no, it's like the movie just kept getting kind of better. There was a period where near the end, I guess spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen it.
Yeah, we're not going to give a damn about spoilers.
And what I'm saying isn't even really that much of a spoiler. Like, I mean, I think a lot of people know that it's a body horror film, and near the end, it does get kind of so gratuitously gory that I was almost worried that I was sort of like, oh shit, if it's just going to end on this note, maybe they didn't really have all that much to say.
See, that's exactly what I was thinking when that was going on too, is I'm like, oh man, this is like kind of ridiculous and like it's kind of going dumb. And how is this going to end?
Yeah.
Is it just going to be like a complete mess of an ending where you're kind of left with nothing?
But then it totally redeems itself, I feel. It does the full circle.
Yeah. And
I just had a big smile on my face and was just like, I was just like, bravo. And I'm really looking forward to I'm hoping that this writer director, that it wasn't just a fluke. I hope she's got a lot more great things ahead of her in her career. I would love to watch her first film, just because if it's anything close to the quality of The Substance, then I think it'll definitely be worth checking out. So,
yeah, like I had never heard of her before, and so this was really her second film.
I believe so. Her second feature. Maybe she did a number of shorts before this. I don't know. But one thing I love is it's like she's, and this is a big problem I have with most filmmakers today is, unlike a lot of filmmakers, she's actually like cinematically literate. Like she's a fan of cinema. She understands cinema. She has great taste and she knows the things that she's referencing. And I don't know, part of me is almost like amazed that this movie existed. Like weirdly, I almost feel like if she wasn't a female who wanted to tell this story, maybe it would have actually been harder to do this in this day and age, but because she was a sort of a female director who's maybe you could even kind of tackle that there's maybe a little bit of feminist views in this, or maybe even anti-feminist views. I mean, it's really quite interesting, the topics and themes that you could dive into with this movie. But what were your thoughts on, because this was one of the big upsets of the night. I think everybody was really expecting Demi Moore to win, and it almost became life imitating art.
Yeah, right.
End.
Yeah, isn't that kind of like a poetic ending to all this in some ways? Because I was totally rooting for her, but and she loses to the young new girl on the block. The new girl who like has been like in like a handful of movies, and it wasn't even.
Part of me just thought like
it's funny because I hadn't actually thought of that at the time. My thought was, oh man, like really like. Okay, that girl in Anora won, but she's like over Demi Moore. Yeah. But I hadn't thought about how it kind of connected to the themes of The Substance. Yeah. So that's actually really interesting you bring that up, because
it almost looking back now, it almost seems that the Academy giving Demi that nomination, that was her award. They were that was basically, they were like, that is what you're gonna get out of it. But it's weird because I guess she was winning. I don't follow the other award shows, but I guess there's all of these award shows that lead up to the Oscars, and some of them are like known to be like the best predictors of if you will win the Oscar. I think it's like if you win the Golden Globe or maybe the People's Choice Award, you're almost like a shoo-in based on patterns. And so Demi Moore won those, I believe. She won a lot of these Best Actress awards, so people are like, oh, okay, so she'll probably get the Oscar. But I mean, when she didn't get it, my first thought was just sort of like, wow, like who the hell did Demi Moore piss off in her past? Like who did she like fuck over in the 90s that karma maybe caught up to, where they were like, fuck her, she's not getting it. Cause I don't know. Yeah, I guess it probably just boils down to like the themes of the movie. Like again, I'm really surprised that it actually even kind of got the nomination, because again, just horror movies, there's a small handful of horror movies that get nominated for Best Picture and or even any other Oscars, and it's a very small list.
But truth be told, there's like a small amount of horror films that also have that kind of like, I guess, like depth and richness of meaning and stuff. Like that are that well done. I mean, but even with that being said, like there's probably only one that actually of the horror movies that have been nominated in the past, there's really only one that like just cleaned the room, and that was Silence of the Lambs. Like even The Exorcist got tons of nominations. It was definitely recognized, but it didn't really win many of the awards. Like, again, and I think it just boils down to, it's like if you're if you can make the best movie of the year, but if it's a horror movie, you'll probably at best get some nominations. It's just that I think we're still at a time where they've sort of stigmatized horror movies. And even something like Silence of the Lambs, some people might even argue that it's not even a horror movie, that it's more of like just a really intense sort of like psycho thriller. I mean, I could list, there's a lot of horror movies that I feel don't even get nominated. Right, that were, that were worthy, very worthy. Yeah, a lot of people talk about Toni Collette's performance in Hereditary, just as for an actor award, that it was like many people were like, that's clearly the best performance of the year, but it didn't even get the nomination because
you weren't going to be given a whole bunch of nominations to Hereditary.
Yeah.
But
the interesting thing is, again, like that's a movie that I think that a lot of people do talk about.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've still been meaning to watch it, but a lot of people have talked about it, and it's very memorable in kind of the cultural psyche. I feel like, for people who have watched it, it's very memorable. It's very unique. And again, it's like the best movies don't always get the nominations.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of always hindsight later on where you look back and then you're just sort of like baffled at some of the things that
you see, like how culturally relevant something is, and you're like, how did this other bullshit movie that nobody cares about get the award? But that's where, sometimes you don't know what's relevant in the moment.
Mm-hmm. But I guess the nice thing about that is that in time, the true classics are the ones that stick around, regardless of any of the awards really don't serve any metric on whether the movie's going to be remembered. It's whether the movie's memorable or ages well. Mm-hmm. So that's a nice thought to knowing that, like, I mean, in the end, the Oscars are fairly kind of meaningless, at least if your goal is to make something kind of like timeless.
You really shouldn't make it about the award. For sure. Did you feel like Dennis Quaid was snubbed a little bit in this supporting actor category?
That would really depend on. I'd have to really look back on who the other supporting actor nominations were, just to see if anybody could have been pulled out. I liked his performance, but I think it was a little bit too. The reason why I don't think Dennis Quaid would have ever gotten a nomination is it's a little bit too cartoony, but mainly it's like it's very one note. And he does it very well, but there's no range in that character. He's kind of like an archetype almost, right? And so that's probably why he wouldn't have gotten the nomination. But unlike Demi, where hers is actually kind of also a little bit kind of cartoony, but you do get the range.
Exaggerated, I guess you'd say. But definitely the range. And I mean, like, that's a pretty intense role. Yeah. And not only that, but even just like, there's so much craziness with the special effects and stuff that it almost kind of takes over from just kind of the courageousness of Demi Moore being like, a 60-something-year-old doing complete, not even like full frontal, full back nudity, like the whole shabam, and so like that fucking takes a lot of balls. Yeah, that's true. And then on top of that, to then also just be like, oh, just let's. Which I mean, like, she still looks pretty darn good. Oh actually. Man, yeah. Well, and I think that's such a big part of the tragedy of the movie, where you're just like, stop. You're like, you're okay, and then she just gets. I know, she's playing a woman 10. People don't need to know that she's playing a woman actually 10 years younger than Demi Moore is in real life. Like, that's how, like, well preserved. I know she's had some work done and stuff like that, but she's also in good shape. Like, there are things that she's doing, obviously. And for someone her age, I mean, it's great. Like, we've got more attractive elderly people than we've ever had in history. And obviously, I guess it's just because, there's just more ways to take care of yourself and hide the aging and stuff like that. But I remember when, like, the movie first starts and Demi Moore's doing the aerobics, I was just sort of like, what the fuck? Like, I was trying to look, I was like, did they deep fake something there? Like, did they make her better looking than she actually is? Well, do you know if they did? Because maybe they did something, or they got like a body double for part of it. It didn't. I don't know. If they did, it was done very well. I do know that not Margot Robbie. Who's the girl who's Margaret Quigley? Margaret Qualley. I do know that she's wearing fake boobs in the movie. But they definitely did the right move to not CGI it. They just gave her prosthetic boobs, which was definitely the way to go. So I don't know. From what I've looked into, it seems like they made Margaret Qualley, they made her look kind of a little bit better than she does in real life. While I feel with Demi Moore, it was more they were probably actually making her look worse than she does in real life. So I feel like the first beginning you see of her in the movie is actually
just Demi Moore, like as looking as good as they could with with good makeup, good lighting and hair and everything like that. And then she just slowly turns into Glenn Close, until it's beyond Glenn Close. No offense to Glenn Close. I think Glenn Close is great.
Yeah.
But there's like a weird, she kind of turns into like a 90-year-old Glenn Close at one point.
Right.
And,
yeah. I mean, that's a good comparison actually, because it seems like she's the type of person who.
And Glenn Close is another one who always gets snubbed with her Oscar nominations. So maybe that was what
she never won?
No. And she had another classic case. She literally had a Demi case where there was like a real upset where they really were like, she's going to win it this time. And they like gave it to some like young girl and stuff. And it's just like, what are you doing?
I really expected her to win it for Hook.
Oh, she's amazing in Hook. She's so good in Hook. And that's not I think that may be the first time, but that's not the last time she's played like a male impersonator either. So.
Oh yeah.
No, Glenn Close is really fucking talented, but it's like, I don't know. And to be fair, it's like Meryl Streep has lost a ridiculous. Meryl Streep's probably lost more Oscars than any other actress, but Meryl Streep's also won like probably like 4 or 5. So that's I guess the difference. And it's just it's rough when you just keep losing. And I'm sure Glenn. The thing is, it's like I think there's actually for an actor, there's probably nothing better than that. Because it keeps you thirsty. You'll probably be an actor who's going to keep acting until you just cannot act anymore. Yeah. There's a thing when you win an Oscar, not for all, but there's kind of an Oscar curse where a lot of people, that is the end of their career after that Oscar.
Yeah. Or, well, I think that there's definitely problems with peaking early.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, like let's say for that girl who won for Anora, trying to remember her name, Mikey, is it like Mikey Madison or something? Yeah, I think it's something. I think it's that. But I mean, yeah, it's probably pretty exciting.
She was good.
She is. Yeah, she was really good. But it's just once you've won the award, it's kind of like that is the pinnacle of the acting career in some ways. And then I mean maybe there's also some something that allows you to just sort of relax into your other roles and just make it more about the work then too. So it's not so much about trying to gain the recognition.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope they would.
Jennifer Lawrence, I think, won for Winter's Bone. Maybe she won pretty young,
or maybe did she win for Silver Lining Playbook?
Oh yeah, or maybe American Hustle. I can't even remember.
See, that's a perfect point. Is we can remember the Oscar winners, but we can't even remember the goddamn movies that they even win for. It's like it could be this or that.
That's probably a good testament to their acting career, though, too. Like the fact that she has that many roles that are that we're not quite sure which one she won for.
Yeah. I like Emma Stone, and for a woman who's like still in her 30s, Emma Stone is a 2-time Oscar winner, which is pretty impressive. Yeah.
Damn, she won twice.
Yeah. She won for Poor Things, and then she won a few years earlier for I don't know, La La Land. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's harder when it's movies that I haven't seen.
Oh, okay.
Then it becomes more of a blur. Oh, maybe the favorite. Maybe no. The other girl won for The Favorite. The British girl, I think, won for The Favorite.
Okay.
Olivia Colman, I think.
I haven't actually seen that movie.
Okay.
But so by the way, Jennifer Lawrence won for The Silver Linings Playbook.
Oh, she did. Okay.
And she was nominated for American Hustle and Joy and.
I think she was nominated for Winter's Bone, right?
So, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so she wasn't exactly the same as the Anora girl, anyway.
Yeah.
But.
Well, the big question is like with the girl who played Anora is. I mean, I guess it could go either way. She might have this huge acting career ahead of her, or we might honestly never see her in anything relevant again.
I suspect she'll still go on to do stuff, but
she'll definitely have offers. I mean, that's the thing is like everything will kind of probably right now she probably has more opportunity than she'll ever have. So this is like that brief period where the ball's kind of in her court or her agent's court, who the agent can kind of help her, but it's like she probably has a lot of things that she could do now, and if she picks some good projects, then that could just start a a real role. Because I mean, she already, once Sean Baker said he pretty much directly cast her because of her performance in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And then also, I guess she gave like a good performance in one of like the Scream sequels. So it was like those were the two movies where Sean Baker was like, we're getting this girl.
Do you want to talk about that movie for a little bit now?
Anora?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so yeah, we're both, I think we've both been like big Sean Baker fans, but I don't think we ever really talked much about the guy.
Yeah. Well,
but I was happy to hear that you were a fan too.
Let me just say, I've only actually ever seen the Florida Project. So I was a fan of the Florida Project.
Okay.
And was a fan of him for that reason. And I hadn't heard about Anora until the Oscars. So basically when it won, I was like, I don't even know what Anora is. I don't know who this guy is that's winning, but I'm going to go and see it and check it out. And so then I put it all together and was like, oh, it's the guy who made the Florida Project.
Yeah. Well, the thing I like about Sean Baker is that, I feel we need more guys like him. I really like his subject matter that he picks and the way he makes his movies. He reminds me a lot of the types of filmmakers we had in the 70s and also the 90s, when it was like, it was a time of like great indie storytellers telling stories about America, which is like something that's really been lacking, I'd say, in like the last 15 or so years. Is we're not having movies that are really about North America, North Americans. And if we are getting those, we're getting some garbage propaganda film, as opposed to that's something that's really meant for global audiences, not Americans. And I feel like Sean Baker is one of the few guys who's doing what a lot more directors should be doing, which is saying, this is where we're at right now. And these are a lot of the types of people that live in the country and how they live their lives. I know me and Kevin were Canadians, so I don't want to, keep making it sound like I completely understand America and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but it's
sort of that Western culture.
Yeah. Like I learned, I think most people, especially outside of America, learn probably the majority of what they know about America from the movies. But it just seems in the last while now, they want to discourage movies that are really commenting on where America's at right now. Like expressing sort of authentic American culture. When I look at this movie, or say when I look at something like the Florida Project, especially, because that's one of the things that I came away from that movie saying to myself was, it just feels so authentic, like real in a way. The Florida Project?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I was like, it's just got a weird authenticity that it doesn't feel Hollywood at all. It just feels real in a way. And I imagine maybe that's the way people felt after seeing a movie like Mean Streets or something.
It's funny, you bring that up, because it's like, that's, even though Scorsese was doing his own kind of thing, it's that same energy of this is personal, and it's going behind, it's going into the nitty gritty, like the undercurrent that is kind of hidden from most of society.
Like, this is the world that I live in, and this is like what it's actually like.
Yeah. I'd really recommend watching a couple more of his movies, because when you watch a couple more of them, you're almost like, wow, it's almost like this could almost be one big multiverse, like all of these characters could be intersecting in the same worlds and stuff like that. And you can kind of see that he's trying to tap into something, but he's not doing the same thing with each movie. He's going into a different kind of subgroup and just kind of putting the magnifying glass on these different kind of characters. And that's really what almost all of these movies are, is they're character studies. His first movie, before I even knew who Sean Baker was, I first became aware of him from his movie Tangerine.
Right, and that's where I think he kind of became well known from originally.
And I actually avoided Tangerine for a long time. It just didn't seem.
Haven't seen it.
I was put off by.
I've actually been interested to watch it, but I haven't.
Well, I will say, like, after I watched it, like, I thought it was great. Like, I was sort of upset myself for avoiding
Didn't he like shoot it on an iPhone? He did. That was kind of the big thing. It was like, this guy shot this movie,
and that was a big
iPhone.
Part of why it didn't seem very appealing to me, because it's like I had seen this sort of thing happened many times before where it's like, oh, we just shot this on a crummy little phone or whatever, but it's a great movie. And many of the times they're not that great. So I was just sort of like,
it's great for what you did.
Yeah.
But...
And then when you threw in like the trans element too, I was just sort of like, oh, okay, I know exactly what you guys like. This is just, again, I thought it was that kind of classic propaganda thing where it's like, okay, well, we'll shoot on a phone, but we'll make it about trans and hence we'll get all these awards. But no, it got the awards because it was actually like a really like good, solid, tight little like no budget movie, and it just felt authentic. The two main prostitutes who are the main characters in Tangerine, I'm pretty sure are actually transsexual prostitutes in real life. Oh, okay. So it is, yeah. It just, there's very little acting. Like it does feel very real, but it's guided enough through Sean Baker that you're not just watching a documentary. He's got a good eye for framing and the pacing and everything. And then, so I saw the Florida Project, and then the other one that I rave about is Red Rocket. Yeah. And, and so they were all great movies on their own, but it's like watching those 4 movies, like after seeing all 4 of them, that's kind of why I was like becoming just such a big Sean Baker fan, because I'm just sort of like,
this guy's got 4 solid movies.
Yeah. And I almost don't want to watch his other ones because I know it's like only downhill from here. Like, not that I think he's got one other movie that's sort of like the one he made before Tangerine is sort of maybe a sort of another pseudo classic that fits in with the others. So I do want to watch, I forget what it's called, but I do want to watch that movie. But I think if I watch the other ones he made before that one, they're not really regarded as anything all that great. But the thing is you're watching this guy progress. Mm-hmm. He's improving with each movie. Although I don't think Anora is his best, but Anora is his most conventional. It's probably his best directed film. Like he's getting slicker and a little bit more polished, I find. And I found that with Anora. Even though Anora is still like low budget and it keeps in the spirit with his other ones, it also has a little bit more of a plot. While a lot of his movies aren't really all that plot focused.
Yeah, that's true.
But I don't know, man. I don't know. Best Picture and all of those awards, as much as I really enjoyed Nora, I don't know. I was surprised that it swept so many awards as it did.
Well, I will say this about, again, I can't comment on his other movies. Maybe you can actually fill me in a little bit on this, but I find the Florida Project to be fascinating, but super annoying because the characters are so fucking detestable. And it's exactly the same thing with Anora because I just fucking hate everybody in it. Like, I was like, okay, 30% of this movie is just characters. It's like a montage of characters indulging in just every kind of excess. And then, you got about another 30% of the movie, which is just characters screaming in each other's faces and yelling over each other and stuff. And then, there's the rest of the movie. There's like some real, I don't know, more drama, I suppose. That's not really to shit on it, but it's to say that it's like, for me, difficult to enjoy. It's not like an enjoyable movie to watch, but fascinating. Mm-hmm. I preferred the Florida Project.
Me too.
But
which also did get a few Oscars from what I remember. That's actually how I first heard about the Florida Project was.
I think so. I think it got some nominations at least.
Yeah. But the thing that I guess kind of frustrated me was that I thought I understood the movie Anora, but then after the Oscars and hearing all of the speeches, I realized maybe I missed the point of what they were trying to get at with the movie.
Okay, this would be great to talk about because I actually want to have that conversation because I don't know that I really got it, but let's think about it and unpack it a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of things I kind of took from the movie, but I didn't really take away that this was a movie that was like shining a positive light on sex work. But apparently,
I didn't think so.
Possibly what this was all about, based on a lot of the Oscar speeches that I heard. It was kind of all for like, let's all for one and one for all for the sex workers out there. And I'm kind of like, Well, there's just so much mixed messaging. Just when you look at all of the things that have happened with Hollywood in the past, with the Me Too movements and all of this casting couch stuff, but also like, you know, hey man, let's all support the sex workers. And I've noticed it's also like emphasis on workers. I don't hear a lot of people championing for the sex customers. It's all about the sex workers, you know? And from what I gathered from the movie, Anora is a very broken character. She's not this, I don't know if she's supposed to be the poster child of encouraging sex work. I did not get that
I don't
whatsoever.
Get that impression. No.
Yeah.
I got the impression that it's like, well, okay. After I walked out of it, I was like, "What am I supposed to be?"
You
left
walked
with?
out halfway because you were disgusted. You didn't even finish the. No.
No. After, like, obviously, okay. So it ends with her like getting it on in the car with the guy who's, you know, maybe the only character in the movie who really shows her like kind of genuine affection, I suppose. But then of course she like collapses on him and is crying her eyes out, and I'm like, what am I supposed to? What am I supposed to arrive at here? Is it just like, is the point of the movie like sex workers have shitty lives? Like it's really sucks. That's kind of what I'm getting. What I was what I got out of it. But I you know I've been unpacking it and thinking about it more too, and you know I think there's a degree of like maybe it's a bit of a commentary on like ownership and exploitation of human beings, where it's like you become like a product to others.
Yeah,
and we end up treating each other
well,
like
it's
a
almost
product.
like, I mean, I liked the ending. Well, I was like, yeah, that's probably how I would have ended the movie too. But it's also like, I mean, it's kind of a bit of like a cliche. Like, I think it's a cliche that there's truth to, but I mean, even going back to a movie like Pretty Woman, there's always this kind of like comment on how like, you know, sex workers, it's they'll fuck you, but they won't kiss you because that's too intimate.
Right. Okay.
And so I don't know. That's always something that I've always like viewed as like almost like just like a staple for like, yeah, that's how broken you are. You can't experience any intimacy. You can give up the most intimate thing, which is you could have sex, but the second someone wants to then kiss you, you either are charging them way more or you're just refusing to even allow that because it fucks with their heads. Because it's a different thing. And so, yeah, like Anora was kind of doing like the same kind of like spiel, except other like it was just done in a different way. Like Julia Roberts just kind of says it in an offhanded kind of way. And I think near the end of the movie they kiss, and then you're like, oh, she
that was a much more optimistic movie.
Well, it's fucking a rom-com. It's a ridiculous one, but Pretty Woman's this like unrealistic rom-com, while Anora's kind of more like, yeah, no, let's you know, deal it more realistically. And so I gotta give it props for that. But yeah, just I don't know, at the Oscars it was all just sort of about like, hey man, like give it up to the sex workers, and I'm just sort of like, are we encouraging? Do we want more sex work? Is that what we're trying to say? Do we want more people like Anora? Like, or are we just saying, hey, like support the fact that they're human beings, which I think I don't think anyone's ever making any argument against that. But
well, I do think there's probably a tendency to not treat people in that line of work like human beings. You know, and I think that's part of the journey that she's been on, right? Is like she's been working in this industry where, you know, people like even so. Okay, so for instance, it seemed to me she took her marriage a lot more seriously than this like juvenile kid took it, and it was almost like he tricked her into. You know how it's sort of like the idea of a prostitute or an escort is supposed to trick you into thinking she loves you, but in this case, it was like she was tricked thinking this rich kid is genuinely in love with her, and he's not. He was just taking her for a ride and you know, just being his. Well,
it's funny you bring it up that way because you're right in that he tricked her, but what he did was he just flipped it because she was actually doing a classic trick. The trick being she just thought, oh, I fucking found my meal ticket.
Well, that's it. It's very transactional for both of them, right?
Yes.
And you know, I think it really makes a commentary on like human relationships.
She did not love him. Like I think we need, that needs to be like an important statement to make. Is she clearly did not love him.
Yeah.
And he didn't love her.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a big part of what the movie actually dives into a lot, even if you want to remove even the sex work element, is actually class systems. That's a big element of Anora is, she's a sex worker, but more importantly, she's in a lower class. Mm-hmm. You could say she's in a lower class because of her occupation, or because of her occupation is a default to being in that lower class, while he is basically in a completely different world than her. Yeah. And so I think, that's like a big element of Anora that people aren't talking enough about, is that you can kind of that's almost the only real scenario where you can almost have such an extreme class difference would almost be in a scenario like Anora, because it doesn't quite work if you flip it around the other way. Like, I don't know, it doesn't quite work if it's this like super successful daughter of a Russian family who's gonna find herself a male prostitute to trick.
I don't know. Well, okay, what about like something like Aladdin, where it's kind of like the princess falls for, you know, the street rat? Because he's more genuine, and you know, she doesn't like these arrogant princes and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's a fantasy story. That's why it's a fairy tale. But yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, I really do think that is just a double standard, where the only way I could see, well, you know what? No, to be fair, actually, I could see the situation being switched around, because really the guy had no interest in the girl, I think, ever. In fact, I don't even think he was tricking her. Yeah, I think he was just trolling his family. He's saying, "Hey, family, you don't fucking give me any attention. I'm going to constantly troll you and do what I'm not supposed to do to get you guys involved in my life." You know,
there's probably an element of that. The other element that I think is really just he's like a completely self-indulgent bastard, really. There's definitely that. So it's entirely just for him to, like, you know, again, kind of possess this girl, well, as long as she's entertaining to him. You know, it's kind of the way that he is with everything. It's like he just gets bored easily and wants to keep on going after the next exciting. And that's probably like a fairly common situation that a lot of sex workers have to deal with, which is again why I'm kind of like, is this movie supposed to like, is it supporting and encouraging sex work? Because I don't know why you would try to do that by focusing on well, maybe I am just misunderstanding the Oscar speeches. I think they maybe wanted to just like try and like give an element of respect and decency to like people who participated in that. You know, there's been kind of this I don't know, a narrative in recent years about like just that sex workers are people too, and they're not
if that's the goal, I would weirdly say Pretty Woman, which is a movie I do not like, did it way better, because
if you're trying to communicate that message, well, I mean, probably
like Anora,
or in a different way.
Like there are movies where you get the character, which is the prostitute with the heart of gold. Mm-hmm. I didn't get that from Anora.
Oh no, definitely not. Like I did feel some sense of like, well, it's funny because, like, again, I'm watching the movie and I fucking hate her. She's so annoying. She's just like, fuck you, fucking. But all the characters are kind of like that. As I say, I think all the characters are just like detestable, except for maybe that the weird. I know the guy you're talking about, Russian guy at the end. He's like the only one who's kind of at all has like genuine kind of a sense of tenderness towards her.
Yeah.
And that's probably like the first time she's been treated that way. Like, so I guess what I'm getting at is I have empathy for her character in that I think she's probably had a pretty fucked up life that's caused her world to be this complete, utter mess and complete chaos.
I was trying to figure out, because I'm like, she's such a toxic character. But everybody else, everybody else is fucked up too. So the only real thing that really gives me any sympathy for her, even if it's on like a subconscious level, is the class issue. It's just the fact that she's kind of the underdog. She's the lower class. They're coming from this place of privilege. That's the only real positive thing I could say about Anora, the character, is that I can sympathize with her and that she was kind of dealt a worse hand, and she's in a much lower sort of class structure than the political Russian family is. But aside from that, I find her kind of just as despicable and unlikable as everybody else. She's just a little bit more of an underdog.
Right.
That's all I can really like say to kind of, I don't know, defend her a little bit in that aspect. But again, movies with unlikable characters has never prevented me from liking a movie. In fact, I like movies with unlikable characters. I just don't know if the point of the movie was successfully delivered to me. I thought I understood it, but
I think there's definitely some layers to it there. And I mean, obviously they draw a lot of attention to that guy. I don't remember his name, but the main guy. I'm gonna call him the nice Russian guy.
Yeah. He's kind of like he's almost like a henchman or something. Like
yeah. In that, he's most of his actions. It's kind of like, she says like, you raped me and you assaulted me and stuff like that. And then he's like, I was trying to stop you from hurting yourself.
Yeah.
And, I mean, all things considered, and in the process of trying to calm her down, he didn't like try to rape her. He didn't try to grope her or anything like that. There's that scene where he like gives her the scarf to try and keep her warm. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. And
when you first meet him, you're like, oh, well, this guy's up to no good. Like, because again, everybody else has been a piece of shit. You're like, well, this guy's clearly just some punk gangster. He's probably going to kill one of them. Mm-hmm. And then he actually turns out to be like the kind of like the most sort of human character in the movie. I don't know. I mean, I guess I also got to...
I actually kind of appreciated... Crap, I don't remember. The main...
The main guy?
The main henchman guy. What the hell was his name? Like...
Yeah.
Really just hold on a second. The character of Toros, he was like the main gangster thug guy who's kind of working for the parents. I'm like, well, that guy is like kind of responsible, and I don't know. He was one of the like less shitty people. In fact, it's funny because like the henchmen are like not the worst people in this movie.
No.
I hate
but
Yvonne,
you think that like
probably the most. And I mean, Annie is really fucking detestable too. But
like, I'm almost positive this was an A24 film, and so A24 is like probably the only kind of like studio where I can kind of I can go into a movie and be like, maybe anything will happen. And so like while I was like, once we're getting to that middle part of the movie, I was just kind of like, I mean, it wouldn't be the craziest thing if these Russian guys just like killed the girl. And then the story just went in a very different direction. Now that didn't happen, but I was starting to consider that because I'm just like, because she was just so like annoying and just like so ridiculous that I was just sort of like, these guys are like, I'm sure they've killed people for far less. And I was like how awesome would it be like if just the movie called Anora kills their Anora like halfway through, and then you don't see that coming, and then it's now dealing with like a dead body or something like that.
Yeah, they really played those guys a lot more like for comedic effect than I was expecting. They were a lot less like these gangsters who would just kill anybody on a whim than they were like these people who are actually trying to sort out obviously like they'll vandalize a store and beat people up, but I don't get the impression that they're just like hitmen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, at the time, I thought they were hitmen or something like that.
That was kind of the impression.
And I'm sure that was the idea. It was probably a manipulative thing that they were doing on purpose. And it got to that, it was at that part of the movie, it was like kind of like right in the middle where you were like, it just kind of took such like a left turn that I was just kind of like, okay, now I have no idea where this movie's going. Like anything can kind of happen.
Just because it got so comedic, you mean? Or
no, just because the story shifted.
Oh, okay.
Like it kind of it sets it up like a rom-com.
Right, yes.
And then it becomes like this actual like...
Well, and I was kind of wondering, how are they going to like play out this relationship too? Are they going to make it where Yvonne is like, no, I actually do love you, Anora. And like, you know, we'll live happily together ever after.
Yeah.
Or, you know, and I think the way they played it was much more interesting because that would have been like kind of cliche and lame.
Yeah.
But the way they did it was much more true to that character, I think, which is like, he's just a sack of shit, really.
Yeah.
But
see, part of me feels, and maybe this is just again because I've like been working my way up to this Sean Baker film, but there's a part of me that kind of feels that all of these awards weren't just for Anora. It was kind of Hollywood's way of saying, hey, we've been watching you, Sean Baker. You've been making good stuff. I'm not saying that these were like career Oscars, but when you like kind of, I don't know, when you watch more of his previous movies, part of me sort of feels like that some of these awards, the fact that he won so many awards that night makes me feel that's part of that was for his previous work.
And screenplay?
Editing, screenplay, director, and best picture.
Yeah.
So like fucking four.
Like some big ones.
Yeah.
And of course it got
I
like
think that's
acting
actually
too.
like a record. Like I don't think anyone's actually gotten that many awards in one
most
night.
directors aren't editing their own movies too,
Yeah.
for one thing. So that was actually really cool. Like just to know that he edited the movie as well. But also, did you hear this thing that they like spent $18 million on their Oscar campaign?
Yeah, and the movie cost like $6.
Yeah.
Also,
so it really does go to show like a lot of winning an Oscar is about like campaign.
Yeah. Well, this will depress you. Sean Baker and the director of The Brutalist are both broke. Like they're broke. Like they have like no money. Like to show for like they might whatever like next gig they can get hired for. They could probably ask for a crazy fortune, but fuck, like you could be an Oscar-winning director. You could have 4 Oscars in one night, and the dude's like, I don't know how little he actually has like to his name, but
that's where it's really interesting. And I almost feel like maybe this is a bit of a cultural shift that's changing, even in like that's even affecting like ultra rich people and celebrities and stuff too. Is just like, people are having less and less money.
Yeah.
Like
as an artist, it's going to be, you're working towards notoriety, but you're not going to be making the big bucks. I don't think. It's just
not to the same degree that like, okay, so like even with like say bands and stuff back in the day, where like when they were selling tons of records, they'd be like living in these high lives and mansions. And I feel like the Hollywood celebrity has taken a hit as much as like people working in the trades or in whatever job, where it's like the wage that you're making just isn't as much as it used to be, or it doesn't buy you as much as it used to.
Have you noticed how many A-list actors in the last 5 years kind of, what is the term, like soft quit? Or they basically just bowed out of the industry because it kind of, and it revealed their true colors too. Cause these weren't like, none of the true actors are like, I'm going to stop acting. These were A-list actors who were like, it's not worth me doing this bullshit if I'm not going to be making the money I make out of it.
Right.
And it was quite a number of and of course they never said it that way, but that's what it boiled down to, because all of these guys could be working for the rest of their lives, but a lot of these guys are doing it for the money.
Maybe that's why so many people are like trying to jump on a Marvel film.
Yeah, I mean, well, it would be just
why?
to cash out, I guess. Like most of them, I think, like actually aren't like a lot of the real actors. They're so out of the loop, like they don't even know what like the term MCU means, which I kind of like. It's nice to know that they're that out of the loop. Like, kind of gives me more respect for them. But how are we doing for time? Should we jump into some of the other titles?
Currently,
maybe
we're at 1 hour and 8 minutes. But yeah, sure. We probably.
We could always
should.
come back. We don't like again. We could always come back to Anora and Substance. I just want to make sure we get a little bit of.
I think it would be good to bounce around and not spend too much time on any particular movie.
Yeah.
I don't know what's in. You also watched A Complete Unknown recently, didn't you?
Yeah. So that was like the one movie that I was like, well.
We should get the ones. We should talk about the ones we've shared in common.
Totally.
Maybe,
Yeah.
First.
And so yeah, no, I liked it well enough. Like it's a fine movie. Like it's a safe film. There's
like
nothing really.
You, it's a fairly conventional biopic. Was my what I thought about it, and it was like pretty well done. I mean, what did you think of Timothée Chalamet playing Bob Dylan?
So that was the thing that I was gonna probably have the hardest part watching the movie was gonna be Timothée Chalamet's performance. Just because I used to do a half decent enough impression that I almost could have gone professional with it.
All right, let's hear it.
Well,
I'll put you on the spot right now.
I'll try to see if I can do an impression of the two. Like, so Timothée Chalamet was just kind of like a one note, I'm stoned all the time, Bob Dylan. It was just kind of that. That was my impression of it. It was just very one note. You didn't get the humor. You didn't get kind of like the energy and the fact that this guy was like,
man,
fucking something was going through him. And
okay, this seems to be okay. I mean, this actually seems to be a common thing with people like that we're very familiar with.
Yeah,
it's like when you and I are really familiar with a certain historical figure, let's say.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about this before, like with Charles Manson or Johnny Rotten in the Pistol series. It's like they kind of capture one dimension of that character, but they lean entirely into that dimension, and then they're missing all this other stuff that's also a part of that character's personality.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear you say that because I'm not that familiar with Bob Dylan.
Right.
But I could totally see why that would be the case.
My entire persona when I was doing Dylan was imitating what I saw in this documentary called Don't Look Back, which is like one of the most famous like rock documentaries. I think I recommended it to you. It's a black and white thing. I think that's also where Cate Blanchett modeled her Bob Dylan off of. And like Timothée Chalamet, I feel he was kind of trying to do the voice based on how the singing Dylan sounded almost. Because when he would actually like sort of speak, like it was kind of sounded more like this. But he would be sort of sarcastic a bit, and sometimes he would get even a little bit more like deeper into it. But he wasn't like that the entire time, and he would be jokey, and he would have this kind of voice, but it would have range. And I heard that like when Timothée Chalamet was doing his, that he was trying to avoid doing any kind of an impersonation. And yet I felt like what I saw was sort of an impersonation. That's not how Timothée Chalamet acts and sounds. Now again, you also maybe to cut him a bit of slack, maybe the director was just giving him the A-OK with all of that stuff. Maybe the director wasn't trying to get anything more out of him. So, maybe it was the director a bit at fault there. I actually was more impressed with Timothée Chalamet's singing. Because I do believe that was actually him singing most of those songs. Maybe even all of them.
If it was, that'd be impressive. I know they always say like, this person did all the singing or did all. Right. I don't know if I buy it, but like I don't. Did Rami Malek do the singing in?
Oh, I doubt it. I doubt he did any singing. But
usually they're trying to like promote that, right? They're trying to be like, oh yeah, this actor did this amazing thing where they just imitated this person's voice perfectly, or like Austin Butler doing Elvis Presley. I don't know. He like. You hear things, right? Well, but it's like, is it true?
Okay, so this is one of the few things I can talk about The Brutalist, even though I haven't seen it. But this is kind of a little bit in that where you're going with that is that so there was some controversy with Adrian Brody's Oscar win because apparently there was some AI involved with his performance, and I was just like, what? So I had to look into it because I was like, are they adding like teardrops and shit like that? Like, you know, forehead wrinkles? What the fuck are you talking about here? Apparently what it was, and you've seen the movie, so you'll be able to maybe go into this better than I can, but I guess there's parts in the movie where Adrian Brody's character, because I guess is he like Jewish, like Hungarian or something like that? He's like Eastern European. I think at some point he speaks in his native language, maybe even just a little bit, right?
Where the heck is it? Budapest? I think he's from Budapest, which is Hungary, I believe.
Yeah. That's Hungarian. So, so I believe it's some parts when he was speaking in Hungarian, they AI'd it to correct the pronunciation to make it like legit.
Interesting.
But I don't know. I mean, if there was a lot of Hungarian speaking in that, like if he did a lot of stuff that was in Hungarian and they did a lot of AI on that, then I could be like, yeah, that's kind of bullshit. But it's like, if it's just a couple little minor parts that aren't all that insignificant, I wouldn't really care that much.
There was a decent amount of dialogue in some other language. I didn't know if it was Hungarian or what language it was, but
were they the most like dramatically acted scenes though too? Like, do you think he was like? Do you think like he got the Oscar because of those Hungarian scenes?
No, but I was impressed with that he was speaking the language.
Hungarian. Yeah. And honestly, man, like this is where it tears me too, because we're both filmmakers. If my actor can't pull off the fucking Hungarian shit, and I could use some AI tweaking to make it sound perfect, like why would I not want to do that?
Yeah,
you know?
It's just telling your story a little better.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like people really criticized Selena Gomez for her Spanish and Emilia Perez. Apparently. Again, I haven't watched that movie. I don't think you watched it, but
no.
We could talk about it briefly, and
sure.
then we can come back.
Yeah.
Okay, so Emilia Perez, I didn't watch it because I heard it sucked, and I don't know why.
This was the movie that everybody was like, this is this was like the one just like shoehorned like propaganda movie that had no place like being there. Like it was just a truly like, again, like I don't know like what arms had to be twisted or some crazy Oscar campaign was made for it. Yeah, maybe they spent
$50 million on their Oscar.
Because here's the thing is, if it was like a small little indie film that nobody ever heard of, but it was actually kind of decent, that'd be one thing. Yeah. This is a piece of shit. And now, granted,
I haven't seen it,
anybody who knows me knows how I feel about musicals, but this is like everything that a musical shouldn't be. It's not, you know what, if it was like, I don't even care about the subject matter of it being trans. It's the songs are so fucking horrendous that I don't know if I don't think this movie should have existed. Like it should not have been made. Like they I don't know, like they took it out of the oven too early. Like I don't know if I guess this was.
Do you think it got made and produced based on some sort of like quota?
Oh,
some
absolutely.
Sort of like a diversity.
No, you don't
quota?
understand. Like there's probably like almost no movies that can qualify for the Oscars anymore, which is why we ended up seeing a couple of like retarded films. Yeah. Like I don't understand. Was Wicked not enough? Like why was Wicked not like why could that not just be the preachy musical movie that deals with like a crazy social issue?
Well, Wicked's actually quite good, I think. Like
at least it has
got good songs. Some really good songs.
I want to watch it just to find out how good I'm very suspicious about these good songs.
Okay, but a guy who doesn't like musicals, I mean, maybe not.
Well, I hate the Broadway musical sound. So it's like there have been like I love Little Shop of Horrors. I love West Side Story. Like there are exceptions to the rule, but
do you like Sweeney Todd? Because I know we did talk about this.
I don't like the songs of Sweeney Todd.
Okay, see, we won't get into that. Go back and watch our Gothic horror episode for a more in-depth conversation on Sweeney Todd. But anyway.
Yeah, but it's I mean, no, I can guarantee you will watch this movie and it might be your most hated musical. This is just based on like the brief, because like the clips I saw were so horrendous, and these were the clips that they decided to showcase to represent the movie. You're supposed to be showing the best clips. So I could only imagine, like, I really do think that this was a movie where they were kind of like, I think most of the people who nominated this movie were like, it's not that good, but my God, is it going to piss off Republicans? That's kind of the view I felt. Because there's no other reason I can imagine a movie that bad getting that many nominations.
Yeah, it's a bit of a head scratcher. But okay, so let's move on from that. Let's go back to the Brutalist then. Now that we've segued and taken care of it.
So I haven't seen the Brutalist, but what were your thoughts on it? Did you like it?
Yeah. So the Brutalist. So it's long. It's like 3.5 hours. I actually found myself quite. Is it
actually 3.5?
Yeah.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
I didn't know.
They had an intermission. They had a 15-minute intermission.
Sounds brutal.
I actually quite enjoyed.
Okay.
But I think so. After I watched the movie, I again wasn't quite sure what to make of it. I think it's the type of movie that I think has got a lot of like artistic substance beneath the surface that's there on screen, but it was over my head, and I'm probably just too dumb to kind of figure it out, because I did actually afterward go and watch a kind of a movie that a video on YouTube that explains kind of some of the symbolism and stuff, and I was like, okay, I can appreciate what's going on here. I wouldn't have been able to figure that out without like watching this interpretation. I mean, maybe with multiple viewings. I would have had to have multiple viewings for sure, but I was kind of comparing it to There Will Be Blood. Oh, in a way, in the sense that like that's this kind of.
Well, I love There Will Be Blood. Yeah.
Well, and that's like this industrial movie, right? But when I watched There Will Be Blood, I didn't get it. I was like, what the fuck was that even about? I'm gonna have to think about that. And
it wasn't until the movie ended that I was like, oh, There Will Be Blood is just a character study. Like, I mean, I'm sure there's more, but I was like, in the end, I was just like, oh, it's not really about the plot. This is about a man who can't experience happiness. Okay. That's what I took away from There Will Be Blood, and that basically he like just wasted his whole kind of life. But I mean, yeah, that's a whole other we could do a whole podcast on that movie.
Yeah. Well, I'm just comparing it because it's kind of the same type of movie where I think it's like
epic. It covers a lot of time. I think
it is epic. It covers a lot of time, and I think there's a lot of layers there, and there's a lot of stuff to unpack. But it's one that requires some interpretation and some pretty heavy interpretation. And I can kind of appreciate that in the sense that the filmmaking is subtle and the message is not like right on the nose. I can appreciate that, but it is harder to
was it entertaining?
I mean, it was kind of entertaining. Like I say, I was engaged watching it. I didn't get bored watching it.
Okay, that's good. And that's especially good for a 3.5 hour movie. So
yeah. And it's kind of like a character study too.
Yeah.
So I was talking to Sun about this. Sun is our mutual friend. Where it was like, if the message of the movie is lost on the majority of the audience, then what good is it in the first place? And this is kind of something I just wanted to have a conversation about. I don't want to say that it's not that I'm not really making an assessment about that. I'm saying how important is it to express the meaning of your movie in a way that clearly makes sense, right? So like if I think of a movie like I don't know, like The Shawshank Redemption or something. That's a movie that's easy to watch and appreciate kind of the themes and messages. Like it's pretty obvious, you don't have to sit there and puzzle.
It's not ambiguous.
Yeah. But you're a guy who like I know kind of appreciates ambiguous endings more than I do. And so I don't know, what are your thoughts on this idea of a film being able to communicate to an audience?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the director's intentions. Mm-hmm. So if a director has a very specific message that he's trying to convey and that wasn't delivered clearly and the audience is missing the point, to me that sounds like the director failed. That just sounds like because he didn't achieve. See, this is something I feel like a lot of people kind of misunderstand with movies, is that someone will like watch a movie and they won't like it, but yet they don't understand that the movie did exactly what it intended to do. And so you could say it's a failure because you didn't enjoy the experience, but was it a failure in that it achieved what it was supposed to?
Right. I'm going to just jump in and say that's kind of like Anora for me. Like, I don't think Anora is like an enjoyable experience to watch, but I think that's part of the point, right? Is to put yourself in the midst of this chaos of these characters.
Yeah.
So I do actually think the movie achieves what it's trying to.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not like a movie where I'm like, that's a movie I really enjoyed watching. It's a different kind of movie.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing with Anora was I liked that it had just a little bit of enough of an ambiguity to it that I could kind of work out my own thoughts on it until the movie kind of then won all these awards and was kind of making more of a statement, I guess, about itself. And that I felt kind of ruined it a little bit, because then it made me think like, oh shit, that's not what I took away. And was that the point? Because if that was the point, now I'm confused. Yeah. Well, I would have just preferred if I just didn't hear any of that. Like I would have just been happy to have like heard like a lot of like thank yous, but not kind of go into, I don't know. I'm still like a little bit like confused. It's like I kind of want to like go into researching more like Sean Baker like interviews post the Oscars just to really understand like what was the sort of
angle you were coming at this from?
Yeah, because
I actually that was like with the Brutalist. I went and watched a couple interviews as well as this like kind of interpretation video, and you know the interviews are at least somewhat insightful. I didn't want to watch a lot of them, but I'm kind of want to dig into more. I always like to hear the artists talk about their work, so it bugs me when artists like don't talk about it. But yeah, I mean, I kind of want to do the same thing with Anora as well, because both those movies I'm sort of like left feeling like I don't fully get it. And maybe it's because I'm like just dumb or kind of lack the filmmaking vocabulary to do a good interpretation. Yeah. But I'm interested at least in learning and trying to wrap my head around it, you know?
Well, the things that I kind of felt like I was getting the same sort of message with most of Sean Baker's movies, which is sort of like, and this is why I'll be very disappointed if I find out that with all of his movies that there was more of an agenda. Because what I always kind of took from them was that I felt like I was getting a very like completely like unbiased person's take on parts of society. Where he wasn't really trying to make any statements other than just showing it for what it is.
Yeah, the work is kind of pure.
And it just speaks for itself. Yeah.
And honestly, sometimes that's all a movie is too, right? It doesn't necessarily have to have some overarching message where you're like, this is the statement that I was trying to make. Yeah. And that's where sometimes you have to determine, well, what kind of movie is this? Is this a movie that was like trying to just entertain me, or was it trying to communicate a moral, or was it trying to just showcase like a certain pocket of life?
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of different reasons why a person might make a film, but it's like, you know, do you put a painting on your wall because it's beautiful or because it somehow speaks to you personally and it's abstract and doesn't look like anything, but it reminds you of something, or do you just like the colors or what, you know? Yeah. There's all kinds of reasons for different pieces of art to exist. And so, yeah, that's one of the things that I think usually I tend to go into a film expecting it to deliver like a kind of a moral or a theme or something, and that's not what I always get. And so those are the ones where I have to think about them more.
Yeah.
Which is okay.
Tell me more of your thoughts on A Complete Unknown, because I kind of went on a little bit of my rant, but I don't feel like I heard more about your thoughts, because I'm not sure like how much of a fan you are of Bob Dylan, and like I don't know if this was a movie that kind of opened you up to a lot of his story, or you already maybe kind of knew about it and wanted to just sort of see how they were going to play it out. Yeah.
I've kind of been like curious about Bob Dylan for a long time, but I've never gone into kind of gone down that rabbit hole.
Deep dive of it all and stuff. Yeah. I don't know if I've done
I thought maybe
The
this
deep
movie
dive,
would be a little
yeah.
bit of a gateway into doing that, and maybe it will.
Yeah.
But I was mostly watching it just as a person who's curious and interested in this guy who I recognize as being like a poet and an artist and a very significant one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I definitely
And also I love period films.
Yeah.
So like there's that appeal, and I like a lot of the songs. And
I really got to recommend that Don't Look Back documentary.
yeah,
There's not a whole lot of music in it, but that's what's kind of neat about it. It's like it's mainly a camera like following Dylan, I guess during like one of his like tours. But he's already huge at this point. He's huge, but he's like still young. It's actually kind of like right on the cusp of him like going electric.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Well, and that's kind of one of the things that's an interesting angle of this movie is it's a movie that follows him from very early in his career to that place of going electric.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think there's obviously themes about that, right? Where it's kind of embracing the inevitable change.
Yeah.
I guess where he's kind of blossoming in this world of folk music where they want to keep it as one thing, you know?
Yeah, I felt really bad for Edward Norton's character. Like, I think Edward Norton's a great actor. I think he always gives a solid performance, but in like a lot of movies, his character would almost be like a villain character, you know? But because he's this like sort of pseudo folk hero himself, like you can't like feel like he's being like a weasel. He just is like, come on, Bob, just play some folk music. And Dylan's like, I'm gonna just do what I want. Nobody tells Dylan what Dylan to do except for Dylan. And I'm just like, fuck. And I don't know, maybe it's like they give him a little bit of a pot belly. His hair's kind of receding. But like, there's never really any time in the movie where Edward Norton's an asshole. But I guess you could say there's like a little bit of that antagonist moment where he's kind of like representing like the old and Dylan's kind of going towards the new.
Is he not the one who like goes and tries to unplug the
I think he does. I think he is the one who eventually tries to unplug it, or
yeah, that was probably his most like villainous
kind of
moment.
Yeah. But it's like, you know, it's like the show is just going, like, I feel bad, like I feel for the guy because I'm like, it's, you know, it is kind of Dylan. Dylan was also kind of fucking him over in that situation too, right? It's not like Elvis. It's not like a Tom Hanks being like Elvis's manager, where he just looks like this like goblin and stuff like that. You're kind of like, Edward Norton's like actually kind of got a point. It's like he's trying to run a folk festival, and like the god of folk is like giving everybody the middle finger, basically. And
but you know, I can definitely relate to this idea of like, you know, maybe people want you to be something. And as an artist, you're like, you can't be defined by what other people want you to be. Like, I was talking about that just before the show. Remember we were talking about Marlon Brando. Oh yeah.
And Kirk, all these people who are like the voice of an era. It's like as soon as you give them that label, they're like, oh really? Like, well, and it's almost like
you want to retaliate or
rebel against, like what can I do to put that label in danger? Is there no wrong I can do? And that's when they start doing really crazy shit, just to be like, let's just see how much these people really do love me. And I don't think that stuff happens when you don't get to that level of success. Like you almost have to reach a certain level of success to even think that kind of crazy, you know? But yeah, no, like I get it too. It's like if I made a big hit film, the last thing I would want to do is recreate that. The last thing I would want to do is make my next movie something similar. I'd probably want to be like doing something completely different. And yeah, if you're like a real artist, you're going to want to just, I think you're especially going to want to change if you become like really popular. It's one of two things. You either are like, oh shit, I've made my fame and fortune, I have to do this for the rest of my life if I want to keep it. And then there's the other ones who are like, oh, you expect me to just do this forever? Well, I'm going to turn around and do the exact thing you don't want me to do. And for Bob Dylan, that was going electric. And
I wonder sometimes how much of it is like a deliberate rebellion against what people want you to be versus just the artist kind of going on their own natural direction, you know,
think it's a bit of
which is
both.
like not a straight line, you know, because most people probably don't really go in a straight line. And
yeah, but I do definitely think I think a lot of artists try to underplay the actual like effects that there's this like kind of back and forth with fans where the artist has like the freedom to choose how he wants to deal with it. Yeah. But again, there's just a lot of artists who, if it feels like it's getting them pigeonholed and like just closed off into a little box, a lot of them just respond by just being like, fuck you. I'm going to do the whole opposite. And that is exactly what I would be in that situation. Because I would be like, I would not be able to maintain this shit anyways. Right. So better off to just
kind of like go in the complete opposite direction, just almost to alleviate the pressure.
Well, and you've already peaked. Like these are all these people we're talking about, they have already peaked and couldn't have peaked any farther. So the only other place you could go is down. Dylan, not only did he go electric, he also in his late 60s, early 70s, he completely changed his singing style too. Like you wouldn't even, well, I mean, I don't know if you've heard that era of Dylan, then you would recognize it, but it's like, it's sort of like a sort of crooning kind of voice. Like really? That's it's this different thing. But which again, I don't know. I was wondering, like, Timothée Chalamet, he's definitely young enough that if they wanted to like continue the Dylan story, or even the middle, because I don't think anybody wants to see the old Dylan story, but there's a lot of like middle ground too, right? There's some stuff in the 70s.
There's somebody who I was thinking of who I was like, that would be like a perfect old Bob Dylan.
Adam Sandler.
Oh yeah, we were talking about that. Yeah. yeah.
Okay. While speaking about Timothée Chalamet, we haven't really spoken that much about Dune. Yeah, Dune 2. I mean, I'm guessing you saw both. You saw both of them.
Yeah, I did. Now, so I watched Dune. It's interesting because like Dune came out in March, I think. And usually movies from earlier in the year don't get like any recognition later on.
Well, if you remember, they were like, they delayed, I think, both Dune movies way later than they were because of the pandemic. Denis Villeneuve was like, he was like, no, we will lose too much money. Like we will never be a success.
And you want it to be a theatrical release.
Yeah. It definitely is a theatrical type of experience.
For sure. Yeah. It's good that there's still people like making movies for the cinema.
Mm-hmm. But I don't think it won many Oscars. I think it got like sound.
Yeah, it just sound and maybe visual effects. I think it won.
Okay.
But so I was watching Dune in. I was a little bit drowsy when I was watching it, and so I was kind of like falling asleep. I really have to watch it again because. For starters, it's already hard enough to kind of keep up with all these terms that you haven't heard.
Yes.
We were just talking about David Lynch's Dune in our previous episode. Yeah. And like you have to familiarize yourself with that world in order to understand what is going on.
Yeah.
And I'm just not familiar enough with the Dune story to be able to follow what was going on enough to really be immersed in it, you know?
Yeah, I'm still trying to decide whether I enjoy Dune. Like, I'm not talking about the movies. I'm just talking about the story Dune. Like, I will say this though, like, because like Jeffrey's a big fan of my dad was a big fan. My dad's not even much of a sci-fi guy, but he got into
the books, right?
The at least the first one. I don't know if he kept reading, but he definitely was a fan of the first one. Yeah.
Well, and I understand the books are actually like substantially better than most of the film adaptations,
right?
And so. Like I went and saw the movie with my brother Michael, and he was saying about Dune Part 2. He was like, yeah, there's like a lot of things that they're not really very effective at capturing like what is so great about the books.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, that's interesting to know. Like maybe that's the reason I don't think this movie is amazing. I'm kind of just like, it's like a decent science fiction film, but I'm not like, I don't love it. I don't love it like Star Wars or something.
Yeah. When I was younger, I always felt that like anything could be adaptable. Like you might have to change it for cinema, but you could turn anything into a masterpiece. But as I've gotten older, I've kind of gotten more into like, I don't know, there might be actually just some material that's kind of like not unfilmable. I mean, we've actually got we've got more than two versions of Dune if you include like the TV miniseries and stuff. But some things just
well, maybe it's
will
hard
get
to,
lost in adaptation. Like you can't create what made them. Like some things, what's special about them is that it's a book.
I was going to say, I mean, maybe that's just it. Like some things are best expressed within a certain medium, you know? And that's probably why, like, for when movies are made originally as movies, like, okay, let's talk about Star Wars again. It's conceived as a film. It's and therefore it's designed to succeed, like to be best told in that medium, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Sometimes just like go on, yeah.
And so it makes sense to me that not every story is going to translate that well. If it's or the transition is not going to necessarily be as effective from one medium to another. You know, even if you do keep all the same dramatic beats in there and, you know, you don't take anything out and you put it exactly as it's described on screen, it's not the same experience.
Yeah, well, and sometimes it's just, it could be just actually at times, I think when it comes to the truly unfilmable books, it's a flaw in the premise. Not that the premise is flawed, but that the premise works only in literary, where you have to use your imagination to fill in the gaps, and that's the only way the premise really works. Like, here's an example. Are you familiar with H.P. Lovecraft?
A little bit.
I
know who he is.
Yeah,
but
he does like cosmic horror, which is in general, cosmic horror is probably like the hardest horror to adapt. But he did a story that got adapted into a movie called I think it's The Color Out of Space.
Oh, that was that Nicolas Cage movie? I heard that was really good.
It's interesting, but here's the problem: is like a big part about this thing is like this kind of like alien sort of entity kind of like lands in this like kind of farm, and then they start seeing this like color, like there's this weird kind of like fungus kind of is producing everywhere, and everything is this color that doesn't exist. Like to the human eye, we've never seen this color before. And then the movie's like, that color will be pink. And so it's like, yeah, the movie couldn't invent a new fucking color, but it was a premise that in the book, you just accept, okay, this is a color. I maybe can't even picture the color in my head, but I'm incorporating this unbeknownst color into this story, and then it works. Yeah. And then in the movie, this color that never exists before, you'd be like, no, that's just pink. You know? So that's just like an example where, again, it's like works as a story, but when something... sometimes like just, you need the imagination to fill in the gaps. If you actually show it, it kind of ruins it.
That's a good example actually of that. Yeah.
Dune. Yeah. I'm the same boat with you. Like I just, I think the biggest problem is, I didn't connect to any of the characters. Like they're all kind of autistic. Right. You know what I mean? Like they're all just sort of like, here's some exposition. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, here's some more exposition, you know.
And there's a lot to be said too for like character relationships, not just the characters themselves, but what their relationships are to each other. Yeah. And are you getting invested in those relationships so that, you know, when somebody's in danger, you feel what the other character's going through.
Yeah. It's like it's a lot of politics, but politics that we have no basis of understanding, you know. And I'm like with you. I this was a big problem I had with Game of Thrones and a lot of sort of fantasy stuff, is that anything that deals with a lot of sort of like, I don't know, political issues, but with characters that have like 6-syllable names that aren't real names, and they all live in territories with long names that don't, I mean, this was even something that ended up fucking me up even with Star Wars to a small degree, because when it starts becoming too out there, like I was, at least with Star Wars,
you had touch with where you're at, or you get...
Well, I was fine with Star Wars character names, but when they would start talking about, this on this planet and that planet, and I'm just sort of disconnected. It's like I almost need to like pull up a cheat sheet. Like I have to start like making a notepad of the teams and who everyone is, just so I can like keep track of it all.
That's probably another thing where the written word works better for things like that, right? Yeah. Like if you're talking about in Dune or something, seeing all these words like written on the page, and you get like a description of it and stuff. It's like the book is already kind of the cheat. The book is the cheat
and you're
sheet,
reading
you know?
it at your own pace, not a movie that's just throwing information at you constantly.
Yeah,
and, like,
and you're just hearing it, right?
Yeah.
Where it's kind of like, what is Arrakis? Who are Atreides? Like, what?
Yeah. Like, I can tell there's some really interesting stuff in there, but at the same time, it's almost like, it's weird. It's like, I'm sure in many ways the book is much better, but then when it comes to like the sandworm stuff, I'm like, I don't know, is that better in the book? Like, because that stuff actually is kind of sweet in the movies. Like how, you know,
it's pretty epic to like see it depicted on screen and stuff, and impressive.
And see, that's the weird thing is like, I feel like in the book, like that completely, like, it's like you're missing the point. Like, it's not even really, you're not supposed to be getting a boner for the sandworms. It's all about the characters and the politics and everything else.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess, you know, they're going to keep making Dune movies until they stop making money, and I guess I'll keep watching them, but I'm not like particularly excited to like see where the story goes.
I don't get that that like hyped up for them either. I'm like kind of interested in them, but like I haven't even rewatched Dune Part 2.
Yeah.
Even though I like fell asleep for a lot of it, and so I'm like, I don't.
Did you like so I guess so in a weird way, I guess you don't even really know what part you slept through. Like, was it?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I missed. I was just kind of dozing in and out of it while I was watching it, and so you know
it's really brown. Like it's
that's the problem. I have a real issue with sandy movies. So like I hate sand. It gets on everything.
But Star Wars, you bounce around in Star Wars.
Well, that's the thing.
You're not
Star
just
Wars
on
is like
Tatooine.
a very colorful, landscape of like just a mosaic of different places and colors and stuff. Yeah. And like, you gotta, it really benefits from cutting around between different scenes and events that are going on at once. You got the Han and Leia and the droids and stuff in the Millennium Falcon. Then you're at Dagobah with Luke, and then you're on the Death Star with Darth Vader, and then you're down on some other planet, and it's like, then you're in Cloud City.
Well,
and
there's something really to be said for bouncing around. You can do a captivating story that's in one location, but your writing has to be like 10 times stronger to make up for the fact that you're kind of in a boring scenario.
It's definitely harder I think it's easier for people to take like little bite-sized chunks of a different story and then have it. Yeah. That's probably a great way to tell a story.
And that is one thing that I feel the David Lynch Dune improved on, is that it was much better at separating the worlds and showing a real contrast between them.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of the special effects I think are obviously improved with the new one, but I also weirdly also like a lot of the old 80s effects too. So I don't know, I'm probably in the David Lynch camp overall, but that's kind of more about pure entertainment. I do think the new movies are better adaptations of the source material, even though I haven't read them. I can just kind of tell, and from what other people have said, it's closer. So, and like, I'm curious to see where the stories go. Like, I don't know if the other books are regarded as highly as the first Dune. So I don't know, like, whether it's just, because the Son wrote so many of the books, you're almost like, well, then, where do you end it with the original authors, like trilogy, or go off from there? Right. Just seems like I don't know. I'm always suspicious about like never ending stories. I'm like, well, it can't have a good ending, but
I think like, often I would say that my first time watching a movie is not my favorite time watching it. And I could say that's probably the case with Dune, because like if I was to go and rewatch it a bunch of times and really become familiar with it, then I'd there's a lot to be said for enjoying something because it is familiar to you, and like oftentimes I'll hear a song for the first time and it doesn't really hit me, but after I've heard it a dozen times, then I'm like, it starts to resonate more and more,
that's definitely been my case, especially with the movies that I end up loving the most, is that
by the way, do you want a Pabst Blue Ribbon?
Well, It's not a Heineken, so I gotta say yes. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. I was trying to think of like a better line there, but I couldn't be like, fuck Pabst Blue. That would just be wrong. These are the leftovers from the Blue Velvet night?
Yeah.
Nice.
Oliver and I played a drinking game where we were watching Blue Velvet and drank these. We didn't talk about that in our...
Well, that'll be the next podcast, I guess, right?
We're going to do a David Lynch episode 2 soon, so coming at you next time.
Yeah, we're not done with the Lynch podcast yet, but this is a little like in-betweener episode. We felt we had to get in there with the recent Oscars, and I don't know. Yeah, maybe we'll see. We'll see if next year's batch of movies are interesting enough. Maybe we'll do another Oscar show.
Yeah. And maybe, a little more immediately. But I don't know, were there any other movies this year that you watched that you wanted to talk about?
Maybe. Do you want to like just say the list again of the big Oscar ones? And
how about I actually talk about the ones that are on my list?
Oh, yeah. Well, definitely. Yeah,
so
especially if you've seen them. Like, yeah.
And there's a few here that actually didn't get any Oscar nominations or that I didn't see. But so I watched Conclave, The Brutalist, Nosferatu we have to talk about.
Sure, yeah, we can talk about that.
September 5th was this movie that I watched. Do you know what that's about? Like you've seen Munich that...
No, I haven't, but that's how you talked about it. I remember you talked to me about this movie a bit, and I guess it didn't get any nominations, but...
it did. It won... I don't think it won, but it got nominated for like Best Original Screenplay.
Okay.
I think. That was probably like the only award that it got, or it was nominated for. But I actually really quite enjoyed it. It's kind of this suspense movie, a historical suspense movie. And it all takes place mainly, like basically from the point of view of this news group that were filming the 1972 terrorist attack at the Olympics, which is what Spielberg's movie is. Spielberg's movie is kind of about the aftermath of that, right? So this movie focused on the actual day, the actual events, and tells it from the point of view of this news group.
Now, even though it's not an official prequel, if I wanted to watch both of these movies, would you recommend watching it should I watch Munich first and then this?
No, I would say watch September 5th first and then watch Munich.
Okay. Yeah.
That was exactly what I did, actually, because I hadn't watched Munich before, but I was kind of familiar with that it was about the same thing.
I think that was
after I watched September 5th, I went and watched Munich just because I was like then more curious about it.
Yeah, because probably the reason that I never ended up watching Munich was because it was already a subject matter that I felt I knew very little about, like so little that I was like, I don't know, like if I'd be interested in, checking this out. So that's like a perfect example of like, if I watch this other movie, it would make me probably enjoy Munich like a million times more because I'd actually have like context for what I'm watching.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely gives some context to that. So I found that helpful. But yeah, September 5th, I would definitely recommend checking out. Yeah. I enjoyed it kind of almost just from the perspective of seeing like how this newsroom operates. And, it's a movie with a lot of dialogue and a lot of talking. It mostly takes place in like a room, like a newsroom, but really engaging. I'd kind of compare it to something like, I don't know, I hesitate to say like Argo, but
you know what? Well, funny enough, I have always compared Munich with Argo, but just as like a political kind of thriller thing.
Yeah, Argo is a lot more of an action movie than what this movie was. This was more
I guess it probably wouldn't be because you just sort of said it's like it's a bunch of people in a room talking. Is that, by the way, is that what Argo is?
No, okay. Argo. Yeah, that's where I'm like, I don't really know. If I was going to say maybe like
is there would there be any comparison to like 12 Angry Men? I know it's not a courtroom drama, but as far as just characters in a room,
12 Angry Men is less tense.
Okay,
I would say like this movie was more like, okay, there's like this serious situation happening, and everybody's on edge, and there's just a lot of like tension in the air over what's going on, and I don't know, it was just very captivating. I don't want to hang on it too long, but
was there any well-known actors in the movie that maybe we would know?
Yeah, let me just check because I can't think of them offhand. Peter Skarsgård.
Oh yeah.
In it.
Yeah, no, I've always been a big Peter Skarsgård fan.
I don't know if you recognize any of these other. Most of these names I don't recognize, but yeah, do you know John Magaro?
I can't even tell by the
Ben
photo if
Chaplin?
I recognize them, but hey, man, you had me at Skarsgård.
Okay,
Skarsgård
perfect.
is
So
great.
He's kind of the main one that is notable, I guess. But
Okay.
you know what? But actually, this is one of the kind of cool things with movies this year is I've been seeing a lot of actors that I didn't really recognize, and I'm like, that's kind of cool.
It was
I like
kind
when
of
it's
it was
not all
kind of a
these
trick
known
question.
stuff.
If the movie was like packed with A-listers,
Mm-hmm.
I'd actually be a little bit put off. I'd be like, well,
Right,
okay,
yeah.
a big Hollywood studio movie, probably a bunch of propaganda involved.
Yeah.
The fact that it's Skarsgård and a bunch of sort of up and comers
unknowns,
makes
yeah.
me think it's probably a genuine movie.
Yeah.
You know, so
No, it is. It's
Yeah.
definitely something worth watching, I would say, and kind of like a bit of an unsung.
yeah. Is the director if you scroll up a bit, is the director known at all?
Tim Fellbaum.
It
I
doesn't
don't
ring a
really-
bell, but maybe he's made a few things similar. I don't know.
Oh, he's
Looks-
from Switzerland.
okay.
And I think he's fairly young too, to
Yeah,
be honest.
yeah, he
born
looks-
in 1982.
Damn.
So I don't know.
So this
Young
might be
for us
this might
old
be one of
guys.
his first American movies, possibly. Yeah.
I think it was actually. Yeah, most of his other credits were like stuff that was European.
Yeah. Well, I guess it makes sense because this is like a European. It's yeah. I mean, if it's connected to Munich,
Yeah.
maybe that's yeah. You want to get a European director, maybe.
Yeah.
Um.
We did kind of touch on Wicked a little bit. And I don't know if there's anything more to be said about that.
Yeah. That's.
I personally am a fan of I'd gone to see the stage musical
Right.
back in like 2014 or something maybe, and I liked it. I liked the story and
like
stuff.
it's not Andrew Lloyd Webber, I'm pretty sure, right?
No,
But I guess
no.
is it a fairly big? Is it like the next era's Andrew Lloyd Webber? Like, are these
I
like
don't know in
people who've
terms
done a
of
bunch of? Okay,
who
I'm pretty
actually
bad
did
with
it.
my Broadway musical stuff.
Me too.
so-
I don't really know. I know more so the production as opposed to the person
Yeah,
who did the
I think my
music.
thing is it's I find the two Ariana Grande and the other girl are just very off-putting to me, and
I
I know
actually
it's
was
a
really-
long movie, and I'm just sort of like, oh god, okay, so. But I mean, I like the eye candy, like that's why I kind of want to watch it. I actually like the Wizard of Oz world, and I think I actually might enjoy Wicked more than maybe a lot of the movies that were maybe nominated. Like
That's actually one of the things that I first noticed too. Watching it was I was like, this world feels not like a complete CGI green screen world, which was very refreshing.
yeah.
It's mostly like production design. It's sets. It's got great costumes. It's got like a lot of just environments that feel very real. I'm like,
Yeah.
this doesn't feel like a CG world to me, and that's
Maybe what it
such
was, maybe a part
breath
of the
fresh air.
success was maybe this movie like kind of paid for the sins of Oz the Great and Powerful, you know? And they were
Yeah,
just sort of
yeah,
like, that's what we're going to avoid doing.
Mm-hmm.
And had that movie not have come out, then they had decided to make Wicked without that movie.
Yep.
Wicked maybe could have been like it could have been a movie that looked like Oz the Great and Powerful and
Yeah.
then just maybe bombed or something. So
Yeah.
so sometimes there's like a positive thing to a shitty movie coming out is it really helps a later movie.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's at least enjoyable to watch for like the visual spectacle, and actually like it's a decent story. I think it's entertaining and funny. I actually think Ariana Grande is pretty good in the movie.
As an actress or as a singer or both?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
as just performing that part, you know,
Okay.
she steps up into that role in a way that's very suitable.
Yeah. To be fair, I don't know if I've actually seen an Ariana Grande movie.
No, I mean,
I worked on an Ariana Grande movie, but
Okay, what was it?
it was like this is like when Ariana Grande was still like a Disney girl. I think it was called like Screwed, which doesn't sound like a Disney title. Something like that. It was like a Greek wedding and a cake exploded. So for all of you like crazy Ariana Grande fans out there, you probably know exactly the movie. Oh, not only did it
Hit
have
us up in the comments. Tell us what this movie is.
not only did it have Ariana Grande, it had that other girl. It had this like other sort of like Disney girl who had like kind of a controversial career. She
Hannah
had like
Montana?
no, not on Hannah Montana. But she was like a co-star with another girl. Like they did like I think their show together. This is just showing how old I am because like anybody a little bit younger than me.
The girl who was in the School of Rock.
She might have acted with that girl.
I don't know.
Maybe like iCarly. Was that a show?
I think that was the show I'm thinking of. That had the girl from School of Rock. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, so if there's a blonde girl,
Miranda Cosgrove,
but that's not the one that's not the girl who I worked with.
Oh, okay.
Jeanette McCurdy, is that the name?
Okay, Jeanette McCurdy.
So I did a movie with Ariana Grande and Jeanette, like right before they both became like huge. It was like a year before that, basically.
Wow.
So
well, it's funny because
I had no idea who these people were. Like this is somebody I could have easily gone to Ariana Grande being like, "Hey, where the fuck is Crafty?" And I would have been like, "Oh shit!" But
it's hilarious. Hey, it's funny because I didn't even like think of her as an actress. I've always just known of her as a singer, so I didn't even really know that she had this Disney.
I don't think she does. To be honest,
career,
like,
but
as long as she's been around for a long time, but in a weird way, this is kind of like her. This kind of feels like her breakthrough actually into the mainstream. Cinema, like
or movies,
because I think she was just kind of more of like a pop star. She would do again like Disney shows, TV movies, but I can't think of any other like legit Ariana Grande movies. And if it was, it would just be something that you and me would never see. It'd be like a rom-com or something.
She was in Don't Look Up, which I still haven't seen. A lot of people told me I should watch that.
I never saw that one either, but I'm kind of curious about it.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious too. I don't know if I'll like it or not, but you know,
I don't think I will, but that's partly why I'm curious. I'm just like, how much will I hate it?
She was in Zoolander 2. Had like some TV things.
Like, you know what's weird is it seems like she would have one of those careers where she's in a bunch of stuff, but always playing Ariana Grande.
Yeah, like look, I'm looking at her credits and she's not much of an actress, really.
Which is weird because like she is I would say like she's a talented performer. Like I mean I think she was doing like Annie when she was like, 7. That's kind of like right there. Well, I guess you got to have your chops if you're getting Annie. Sorry?
Yeah, true. Maybe she just wanted to focus on like her music career though, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the passion for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But maybe she'll do more film stuff now. Cuz it's one of those things where maybe like for an actress it's like it's harder to grow past a certain age with your music career if you're like that kind of pop star.
If you're smart, you'll want to especially I hate to say as a female singer like transition or maybe just gain a lot of weight and become a different kind of singer. But
she could probably move into acting and have that be like more of a
my
career path.
My guess is, and this is coming from like I'm not really very familiar with Ariana's music, but maybe she has a lot of range when it comes to her singing, but when it comes to her acting, there's probably very little she can actually, like what she did in Wicked is probably more or less what she can kind of do. And
that's where I'm like, I think she was pretty well cast in that role, and that she's this very like preppy kind of perfect, princess kind of fairy.
I don't know if she's that preppy now. Have you seen her?
This princess kind of girl.
She's got to eat a sandwich, and she'll get that that preppiness back. That's a whole other discussion of the like what the fuck happened to Ariana Grande and that other woman after Wicked. They just look like they're like, I don't know, on the anorexia diet.
She was well cast in the movie, I think, and entertaining to watch. But that's kind of Wicked. I don't want to sit on it for too much. Are there
we before we jump into something like Nosferatu, do you have anything else on your list we could I'm wondering if there's even anything else that I saw that I've forgotten.
Did you watch The Wild Robot by any chance?
I actually didn't, but
I didn't watch it either. But
I kind of want to watch it, but I got to give props to my Latvian brotherhood. This is the first nomination and win Latvia ever got, and they won. Yeah. They beat The Wild Robot for feature animation. So I actually kind of I wanted to Flow. Yeah, I actually kind of want to.
That?
No, but I would like to. I was planning on I thought The Wild Robot was going to be the winner. I just had a hunch.
Yeah, me too.
And I was really surprised that it was Flow, but
Well, hey, good for the Latvians. They needed that.
Yeah, there's that diversity checkbox you got. You'll never see another Latvian win for 80 years probably, but that's how it flows. But did you like The Wild Robot?
I didn't see it actually,
okay.
but my friend had been recommending it. He was really raving about it, and I've heard it's really good. So I was kind of curious if you had. It's definitely on my list. I will definitely check it out, but haven't seen it yet.
You know, it was one of my favorite movies. It's just it bombed. That it is everything that is not an Oscar type of movie. But I gotta, I want to at least briefly bring up my love for Furiosa, which I think was one of my favorite movies of last year.
This is a great topic too. Let's talk about the movies that we liked that were not nominated for anything. So Furiosa, let's talk about that one because I didn't watch that, but I know you have some things to say.
Oh, you
about
haven't
it.
seen it? Oh, okay.
No.
I mean, if you're a fan of the Mad Max world, like there's nothing to dislike. Like I know that I guess the theory was that some people felt, oh, here's another kind of feminist female superhero kind of movie, and where's Max? I don't know. That just. I mean, I'll be honest, I mean, if I had to choose, I would have preferred another Mad Max movie, but I was more, I couldn't have asked for anything more of this Furiosa movie.
Well, isn't that great when they do that sort of thing right, you know?
Yeah.
Because too often they're trying to do the female, it's a chick who kicks ass or something, and it's awesome when you see it done well, and that just goes to show it's like it's not about people like being pissed off that you make a female the protagonist or something.
Yeah.
It's just about making a good movie versus a shitty movie.
Yeah,
it's like got an agenda versus one that's just a genuinely good movie.
There's like a purity in it that I almost feel is almost impossible to find in almost any other franchise, which is that every single movie's been done by George Miller, and there's something to be said for that. There's been a certain level of quality and consistency. Yeah, and I don't think anybody put a gun to his head saying make a Furiosa movie. He wanted to make a Furiosa movie.
Yeah, and it's probably partially good because I guess he had something more, another story to tell in that world, It wasn't like it's not like an unnecessary sequel.
Yeah.
It was like just...
It helps with the world building for sure. And I think I guess it does the first thing that's been done in a Mad Max movie where it's the first like epic in a way. Like if you were to compare it to Fury Road takes place maybe over 3 days. It's like nonstop.
Right,
it's like a nonstop chase over 3 days. While Furiosa takes place over 25 years maybe.
Oh, wow.
And so you don't see that with any Mad Max movie. And there was something I really liked about seeing this Odyssey play out. And I mean, I don't know, maybe the movie wasn't 100% perfect, but I can't really think of any. Some people felt maybe there was maybe a little bit too much CGI compared to the Fury Road, which was fairly pure and that it had like very little CGI. But I don't know, the CGI didn't bother me in this movie. Like it gave it a sort of a comic book feel that didn't take me out of the movie at all. And yeah, there's a couple little things that I won't really get into, maybe plot wise, just because you haven't seen the movie. But again, nothing that really ruined the movie for me. Some people weren't a fan of the ending. It kind of gives you multiple endings, so I'm well, you can kind of pick and choose the one you want. But I don't know. It's the part that saddens me is that we actually might never get another Mad Max movie because of the failure of Furiosa, and it's a shame because the movie did everything right other than make a shitload of money. But as far as filmmaking goes, it was a really good film. So
yeah,
I definitely recommend it. Yeah,
I really should have gone to see it, but well worth talking about. And it's good to be reminded of some of these things too, because you forget about them. Like I didn't even realize that was just last year.
Yeah, actually, well, you know what? It was probably just a little bit after Dune too, and that might have been part of that. Might have been, I think, there might have been a bit overcast. Or like people like you were like, fuck, that was a lot of sand. And
no, that's another thing that does actually kind of put me off of. Actually, we never really did wrap up our conversation about sand, but fuck, man, like anytime there's like, say, like some military movie that takes place in the Middle East, I'm like, oh, fuck, no.
Oh my God.
Anytime there's like a cartel movie that's in Mexico, I'm like, no, fucking sand.
I can't get into like Middle East war films or Gulf War stuff because it's so depressing to me. I'm like, give me the Vietnam where there's jungles and tropical like animals
right.
and things you could hide under.
Or honestly, I prefer like the World War II where it's like trench warfare in the winter time.
Anything is better than the fucking Gulf War. It's just so. It's like. I just want to leave like the second you're there. Maybe it's just like I feel it's like I try to like put myself in that situation and I'm like, there's nowhere to hide. Yeah, you're just there, and it's just I don't know. No war is fun, but that seemed like the least fun war of any war. Just location wise, like I think
just being
coming from Canada, I think we would take snow over sand.
I would for sure. I think. And that's like where, again, going back to Star Wars, I usually find Tatooine to be like the parts that I less like, you know, like
I like it only because I just feel like it's just enough, you know, it's just enough of Tatooine.
In the context of the movie, it's like, thank God this isn't the whole movie. But that's the thing with Dune is it's the whole movie. Yeah. And that's the thing with like the Mad Max is it's the whole movie is that environment. And that's where Star Wars, like it exists as part of, you know, the myriad of landscapes.
I've always thought of the Star Wars, the original trilogy. I've always thought of like you could just break it down to that trilogy. It's sand, snow, forest. But all three of those movies have also space itself, and like even like something like the first movie where you think there's a lot of Tatooine stuff, there's even stuff like, oh, they're all like stuck in like the garbage disposal things. Like I know it's a small little area, but there's like a creature in there. Like there's these other little realms that you get to like be in for a moment. For sure. Yoda's swamp, you know, that's another thing that kind of like mixes things up a little bit. Or even
like inside that meteorite worm
with the worm thing. All of those like, little things just add.
Cloud City is a huge one.
Cloud City, I always forget Cloud City, and it's like a classic example of just like its own unit, you know. And that might have been part of the problem with like the prequels, is the prequels were kind of like there's not a lot left to cover. They in the third movie they were like, okay, we're gonna go lava. We're gonna go with the lava one,
the lava world.
That one,
we have
and the water world would be probably Phantom Menace, right? They did all the water stuff.
Naboo is very different. And then like Coruscant is its own thing, which is the whole planet is a whole city. No, there's quite a bit of stuff going on there. Again, I mean, I just really like how those movies take you to all these different landscapes.
I think it's especially for like an a hero's journey film. I think it's like really important to like you've got to be like making these pit stops in different places. Like, can you imagine just like if there was just like a fantasy film, but the entire thing was just like shot in like Northwest Territories and that's it. Like imagine Empire Strikes Back, but it's, you never left the snow. You would eventually actually get pretty bored with Empire.
Well, that's the thing with like Lord of the Rings too, right? Is you've got the Shire, you've got Rivendell, you've got Lothlorien, you've got Mordor, you got the Dead Marshes, you got
you need it. Like you need it. Yes. Not every movie does, but if you're doing like an epic Odyssey adventure, like goddamn, like switch it up. It's the same thing where it's like it'd be like if all the characters are all the same. You got to change up your characters and
I like dynamic in movies, you know, and that's where you're shifting these things.
Well, if you change the dynamics, like in a great movie, no matter where you are in that movie, that's where you want to be at that moment. Because you know you're going to be moving pretty soon anyways. And then when you get to these movies where you don't move locations, that's when you get really antsy and bored because you're just like there the whole time.
Well, and that's probably where it's nice to have these parallel storylines going on that you can bounce between too, right? As you just mix it up for people. And
if Star Wars was truly Star Wars, if it was only spaceships flying around and shooting at each other, I would be bored to tears. And there's a lot of Star Wars ripoffs ripoffs that didn't understand that, and
They're
that's
like
what they
purely
became.
space movies.
Yeah,
I know,
and it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
What are some other? What else you got on your list there?
Let's see. So I actually wanted to talk about the movie Here, which was the Robert Zemeckis movie.
Yeah.
Now I know when I mentioned this to you, you were kind of like, "Oh, that sounds gimmicky." This is the movie where like the camera's just in one spot.
Well, it does sound gimmicky, but I love Robert Zemeckis, which is I was actually talking to our other buddy Sean. I was talking to him about this. Just the other night, actually. And so I'm curious. I do want to see the movie, but there's also part of me that's like, I think I might enjoy Here because prepping myself for it, I'm going to be like, fuck. Okay, just get through this fucker. And then hopefully the magic of, like, I don't think Robert Zemeckis would have attempted this movie if there wasn't something to the story. If it was truly just a gimmick,
well, like
he probably wouldn't have made this movie.
I know Robert Zemeckis can be kind of like hit and miss, but I don't know. I kind of root for the guy.
I find he's more hit than miss, but I haven't watched a lot of his more recent stuff.
And I like that he's like experimenting and kind of pushing boundaries and pushing technology and stuff. And I don't know, just he's an interesting guy who's trying unique things with films.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's kind of like a personal fantasy for me is that idea of being able to stand in one spot and watch like the years roll by almost in like a time lapse and just see like what was going on in this like I don't know, if I could stand down on the street of downtown here, let's say, and just see what it was like in 1910.
Yeah.
Like, that's so cool and interesting to me. And this movie kind of gives you a little bit of that experience. And like the camera is literally locked off for basically the whole movie. And you see like, you know, centuries roll by, right? You see little events from like, you know, the natives prior.
I'm guessing though, like very quickly and in a montage kind of way.
No,
right?
not even in a montage sort of way. It'll be like a short scene, you know, so maybe like a couple minutes scene.
Okay,
but they'll show like, you know, you know, then the colonialists come in and they're like building settlements in this spot, and then, you know, the town gets built up, and so it actually jumps back and forth through time a whole bunch. Like, it'll be like kind of modern times at one point, and then it's the 1920s, and then it jumps into like kind of the 1960s, but then it's back to the 1920s again.
Oh, that's pretty crazy. I was totally like, I assumed this was a fully linear.
It's not a linear movie.
Oh, okay.
And that's partially what really does keep it interesting. Yeah. So you're kind of always seeing like these different events that are kind of going on in this house for the most part, but even like before the house is there, you're seeing like stuff. And I don't know, I thought this was a pretty underrated movie, like in that I never heard anybody really talk about it.
I think it it's another radar. Title where I was sort of saying like 2024 was considered like the year of the flops, and I think that's just what happened. Was it just totally fell into that category along with to be honest most movies.
Yeah.
I heard it's got maybe like the best de-aging effect we've ever seen in a movie. I don't know what your thoughts were.
Pretty believable. I was pretty well sold on it. I'm
not saying like perfectly flawless, but just compared to previous movies, I've heard like it's kind of better than stuff we've seen before. Which I'm like, well, it's a newish. It's also probably the newest technology, the newest de-aging we've ever seen too. It'll just keep getting better, I'm sure. Yeah. But I was curious. Well, I was curious about seeing how they pull that off and.
Well, and it's also like the story that they tell that takes place over a long period of time too. I mean, to me, it was actually like quite moving watching these people's all these kind of like significant events unfold in these people's lives. It sort of focuses predominantly on like the main family, which is like Tom Hanks's family or whatever. But for a movie where the camera doesn't move, it's actually very engaging and emotionally moving, you know, getting to watch. It's one of those types of movies where, you know, you see all these little snippets of life and they kind of stitch it all together and you're like, wow, like, you know, they went through all that stuff in this house. And it was really well done at the end of the movie. I'll spoil it for you.
Oh. Wait, really?
Well, just
wait. I actually do want to watch this movie. Okay, at some point.
Like, it's not a plot thing, it's more of a technical thing that happens.
Well,
and then at the end of the movie, okay.
I don't know if you know what, let's let's not go there actually, maybe. Okay. Or we'll save it. I don't know. Or if there's a way we can yeah, I don't know. It's it sounds like it's like the one like really impressive thing that like if I watched the movie, I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, it was better than I knew that in advance. But well, maybe we need to do a Here episode.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I would totally be down to it. And why not?
Yeah,
you know,
well,
it's an unappreciated movie that we could talk about and maybe cast a little bit of.
Well,
light on.
I've seen the first movie. I might as well see the sequel. It's a sequel to Her, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's more like a sequel prequel. In that movie takes place later in time,
so it's
you're jumping back. You're seeing all the years that led up to that.
It's The Godfather 2 of Her.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No. Well, but honestly, like you said before, like props to fucking Zemeckis just for being where he's at in his career and to be able to I mean, he took a really big chance with the movie and financially it didn't pay off, but kudos to the guy for doing it anyway. He probably knew it wasn't going to do all that great, but he wanted to experiment.
Well, this is the thing where my heart like aches for Zemeckis because he tries stuff and it's usually like pretty big budget and ambitious. Like, you know, he did that Welcome to Arwen movie, which I haven't seen, but it like looked pretty interesting. It had Steve Carell. It was actually shot here in Vancouver.
I actually, a couple of friends of mine acted in that. Actually.
Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense because it was shot here.
Yeah,
I was BG in it.
There you go.
but like again, it looked like it was something different. He of course did the stuff like with the animations of Polar Express and Christmas Carol. Even Castaway, I would say, is actually kind of experimental in its own way. Fucking sand.
Yeah, but you bounce around. There's a cave, there's water, there's the whole pre-crash stuff.
Definitely a tropical island is better than the desert.
There's like a deleted sex scene where it's like a camera's inside Wilson as Tom Hanks just like kind of fleshlights it.
Man, I gotta watch that.
Yeah. So he's a pioneer, that Zemeckis. Yeah. I don't know, to be honest, in many ways, I feel like kind of post-millennial Zemeckis, in some ways, is almost kind of like doing things with his career that I almost would have liked to have seen more with Spielberg.
Well, I was going to say, like, there's a lot of similarities to me with him and Spielberg, and that, like, he kind of
he was he was Spielberg's protege. I don't know, like, if
okay, that makes a lot of sense. But I just feel like he's got the same sort of almost like childlike sentimentality in a lot of his movies that Spielberg has in a bunch of movies.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I really like kind of the emotions that he's conveying.
Yeah, no, it's like, again, like I can't think of a lot of his like movies of maybe like the last like 10 or maybe even 20 years. Like the last one that really kind of comes to mind is like What Lies Beneath, which is like early 2000s. I know he's done stuff since then. I've probably even seen some of the stuff. I just can't think about it. But even going back to the old stuff, like the amount of hits that guy's had, like, and these are like hits that are like still remembered and beloved. I'm talking like, Back to the Future, Forrest Gump, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Even Death Becomes Her, I think, is a very underrated Zemeckis movie.
I haven't seen that. I'm gonna have to check
really?
some of these out.
You gotta watch that. You gotta watch Death Becomes Her.
Contact? Oh, wait.
There's actually, just to bring this all the way back around with the Oscars, there was a lot of influence that Death Becomes Her had on The Substance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it does its own thing, but there's definitely some similarities there that I think were even maybe like noted by like the filmmakers.
Oh, he did direct Contact.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's another.
Have you seen that?
I have seen Contact. Yeah,
I like that movie.
Yeah.
He also did Beowulf. That was like one of the movies that I thought was like kind of a miss. Or he did Mars Needs Moms. That was like
that
one
sounds
that
like a miss.
yeah, it was not a.
Yeah, I actually kind of didn't mind Beowulf. I watched Beowulf way later, and by the time I watched it, I was kind of like, I just accepted the bad CG for what it was. I think the thing that I liked most about Beowulf was it finally brought Robert Zemeckis back with Crispin Glover.
Okay.
Crispin Glover plays Grendel, the monster.
Okay, gotcha.
And so I enjoyed his like I enjoyed that. But other than that, yeah, I think it'll be always like a bit awkward as like just that early CGI kind of movie. Beowulf.
Sorry, I was totally wrong. Mars Needs Moms is not Zemeckis.
Yeah, I was gonna say it didn't. Maybe he produced it.
No, I'm even looking at the producer credits, and it didn't look like he was like involved in it that way.
Oh, did you? So you didn't see it from like scrolling through his page? No. Oh, okay.
I could have sworn that was like he had something to do with it. Oh, wait, no, okay. He is credited as a producer.
Did you ever catch any of those old Tales from the Crypt episodes? He directed the first episode and a few others.
Those are great.
Yeah, no, I think they're really well done. And
I love kind of just that childhood spookiness.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of... Do we want to jump into Nosferatu, or do we have anything else?
Let's do it in a bit. I'm just going to touch on a couple things quickly. Inside Out 2. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't. I saw the first one.
Yeah, I like the first one. I think the first one's like really clever and entertaining. Inside Out 2 is not as good, but like still not bad.
I believe it was nominated for Best Animation, right?
It was also nominated, yeah.
Okay.
There was this movie that had Pamela Anderson in it that I've been meaning to watch called The Last Showgirl. Have you heard of this?
Only from you.
Oh, okay.
You brought it up a few times, and I'm like, I don't know if this movie exists. I think it might just be in Kevin's head because you're the only person I've heard about this. But
again, to me, it sounds interesting. It was one of those movies that like I was looking at in October, November or something, and I was like, that just sounds like an interesting movie. This like this aging kind of Vegas showgirl who's, I guess, on the verge of retiring or something. I don't know what it's about. It didn't get award nods or anything, but maybe it's good. I don't know. I was just curious to watch.
See, like that almost also sounds like that could have been a Sean Baker movie. There.
I could totally see that. Him doing something like that. I don't know who made it, actually. I should look it up.
Did you like obviously I guess you must have liked Pamela Anderson's performance. If you didn't, the whole movie would have, I guess, just fallen apart, right?
Oh, it was Gia Coppola. That was one of the reasons. One of the Coppola daughters, I believe.
I don't know if I've seen a Gia Coppola film. I've seen like lots of other Coppolas make their movies.
I don't know how she's related to the Coppolas, but she was born in 87.
Oh, if you click, she might be Sophia's sister, maybe.
Or would she be?
She could be related to Cage.
Is she young enough to be Sophia's daughter?
No, she's not.
Oh, okay.
Unless
I don't know.
Unless there's some really fucked up stuff that.
Oh, maybe.
That happened to Sophia.
Maybe she's her sister and her daughter. Okay. But yeah, okay. So that was one of the things that picked my interest too. Is it was Gia Coppola, and she's the one who did she write it too? I don't know.
Okay. Roman Coppola's made a few good ones, and obviously Sophia and Francis, but
writer was Kate Gersten.
Okay.
But anyway, so this is a movie I still have to watch, so I don't have. I
thought you'd seen this movie.
No, I've been meaning to watch it for a long time. I just there's been limited screenings of it around here, and I kind of was prioritizing some of these other the ones that won the Oscars. So
yeah.
Well, we did talk briefly about Nickel Boys. I watched Nickel Boys, which is also kind of a little bit of the gimmicky thing where it's like, okay, it's all shot from a first person point of view.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Not entirely, actually, but mostly it's shot from a first-person point of view, and
that's another one of those gimmicks too. That I have not yet enjoyed a movie that is done in that style, but I'd like to believe that anything, is I'm trying to think of like the best. My favorite is like when there's maybe like a scene that's a POV, but to do an entire movie. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I think it's like, to me, it's too limiting. It's the reason why I don't like courtroom dramas, because I'm like, I know nothing's going to happen outside the limits of a courtroom. And that's the thing is like, I guess for me, it's like, I hate, this can go for any movie, is when a movie just becomes so limiting that I know a majority of things can't happen in it. I start getting kind of like just bored and antsy. And again, probably like this, it's not a great movie, but I guess like the main movie that comes to mind when I think of these gimmicks is Hardcore Henry, which was an action movie that was just like designed like a first person shooter.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, as a short film, it would have been fine. 5 or 10 minutes, great. And like, I appreciate even the difficult, I recognize, that was really difficult, all the stunts and choreographing all that stuff. It still doesn't make for an entertaining movie.
Right.
And like I would never watch Hardcore Henry again. But you did see Nickel Boys. It's probably a very different take.
It's a very different movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was basically about these, so it takes place in like the 1960s, and it was based on kind of these,
is it like a sort of
like
a delinquency?
a reform kind of school?
Yeah.
Where like these kids were like pretty badly abused and treated horribly, and yeah.
Do you see Full Penetration?
No.
Oh fuck. Well,
no POV. No.
It's a POV from the asshole point of view. Yeah. Did you like the movie?
I did like it.
Okay.
Yeah. And I thought that, so it was interesting because I was reading reviews about it, and some people were saying like, the way this movie is shot is just like really annoying and stuff. I didn't personally think that. I thought it was like pretty effective in how how it was done to tell that story.
Okay.
And it was novel, so it was like interesting to watch just for that kind of novelty too. But I don't think that hurt the way the story's told.
Yeah,
it really does kind of put you in the perspective of that character and whatnot. And
there was it does remind me. There was one movie that I did like that was a POV movie called Enter the Void. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's made by this fairly like extreme French filmmaker. But yeah. So I mean, there you go. Like it's yeah. You can definitely you can definitely make a good POV movie if it's the right concept.
Mm-hmm.
There's another one. It's a slasher remake with Elijah Wood as like the killer, but the whole movie you're in Elijah Wood's POV. I haven't seen the movie.
Are you sure
yet.
he's in it?
I think there's like a mirror shot.
Or did they just say that it's Elijah
I think it's at the very end of the movie. I think he like looks in the mirror, and that's when you see him. He probably talks through the whole movie, and I think he was probably a producer too. But yeah, I think I'm
gonna make a movie like that where it's like it's got this big star in it, but you only ever see his hand.
And at the very end, you're like, "Hey, Elijah, over here," and then you just get that one shot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like, with Nickel Boys, like, I guess, without any kind of like spoilers, like, do you feel like is the POV that you're experiencing the movie through, like, do you really get to know this character that is having the POV, or is he kind of more like just watching everything unfold, and it's really who he's watching that you're connecting?
It's actually like two characters that it kind of swaps back and forth between their point of view for the most part, and so. It's largely about their relationship in meeting at this like reform school and the experiences they go through, and then they have to break out eventually, and kind of just like the tragedies they face, and also kind of like little life lessons and whatnot. But It made me more interested in like reading a little bit about that part of history, because that was kind of something, just another thing that you learn about where you're like, damn, this like pretty fucked up place.
Yeah, like was this happening? Do you think this was like happening like all over the place, or it was just this particular school that was just
I guess in my research, Nickel Academy, which is like the school they're showcasing. It wasn't a real place, but it was based off of some other school in Florida. So it was like it was fictional, but it was based off of something.
Okay.
So anyway, there's just like a lot of kind of horrible things that took place there, and like really severe abuses, and it only closed down in like 2011 or something. So this stuff was going on for like a long time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully it didn't stay that like, I mean, it seems like the two main characters were like characters of color. So maybe I would imagine there's also a lot of like racism in the movie. So I would hope that like at least that was somewhat like based of the times of the 60s, and like if this thing just closes down in 2011, like hopefully some of the more sensational things maybe, you know, calmed down or became more to the times. Like I would imagine the reformatory, like in general, like you send your kid to a reform school, it's like by design it's going to be probably pretty brutal, even like the good ones, right?
Well, it's interesting too because like some of the people who are committing the abuses are like other black people. They're like the people who are kind of in charge or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's usually the case. It's like that's like real prisons too, right? It's always like the wardens and all these other people that are like extra fucked up. And,
or like one of the things that I read, like I don't know if you've ever read Viktor Frankl's book, The Man's Search for Meaning, but it's like he's he was a Holocaust survivor, and he talks about being in the concentration camp and how some of the people who were committing these abuses were like people who were other Jews who were trying to like kind of get a foot up in the status for the sake of their own survival kind of, and like they could become like really seriously like abusive and horrible people to the other prisoners, even though it's like your own kind and you're both being persecuted.
Oh yeah. But it's that it's partly a survival instinct thing, and it's also just a Jewish thing. No, I'm kidding. But another good example of kind of what you're expressing, another good example of that would actually be Samuel L. Jackson's like Uncle Tom character in Django Unchained.
Yeah. Same type of thing going on there for sure. Yeah.
And it's that fucked up thing where it's almost like, to a degree, it's almost like I can't even really blame them all that much. It's like it's just a circumstantial thing of like, maybe there's, if they were able to not be as, I don't know, backstabbing, that would have been like nicer. But it's like I get that they're just, I understand their motivations. Like it's not like just like fuck you. It's more like fuck you or fuck me. So fuck you, I guess, and
fuck this whole situation, basically.
Yeah,
that's what it is, though, right? It's just like a fucked up. If it is a fucked up situation,
and that's the crazy thing about like war and Holocaust is it really shows you who you really are.
Yeah, and kind of like the complexity of the humanity involved in that, you know?
Yeah.
That was one of the things that I watched. What was that movie that came out? It was like, fuck, it was.
Is this a recent? Is this like a recent like Oscar?
Yeah. No, I think it came out in 2023. Actually,
is it It's a Holocaust type movie?
No. Well, it was about like human trafficking and kind of like child sex trafficking. I think I didn't see it, but I remember you telling me. Fuck, what's the name of it?
Is the word like power in the title, or
I'm gonna look it up.
It's like Jim. Is it Jim Caviezel?
Yeah, Jim Caviezel was in it, and let me just get the title of the movie. Sound of Freedom. Okay, that's
gotcha.
What it was.
Okay.
So in Sound of Freedom, it's basically about like these people who go and they're saving these kids from sex trafficking, and I think that's like a worthy thing to shine a light on. But also, one of the things that I've learned about child trafficking in some of these countries is like one of the really fucked up things about it is families who sell their own children into the trafficking so that they can make money to survive. And I just think that's a really fucked up dimension to it, which would be worth touching upon. And Sound of Freedom didn't really like get into the complexity of that. It kind of was more like this: these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, they're the heroes, they're saving the children, and look at all these evil sex traffickers. Also and I think that the complexity of that situation is a lot more interesting.
I'm curious, like the families who are selling their kids to sex traffickers, like do they fully understand that they're selling them to sex traffickers, or do they maybe think that they're actually selling their kids? Do they actually think that they're almost like selling their kids for a better life, like almost as if like almost the equivalent of like them, like like people will give up their children for adoption not because they want to, they're just sort of like they'll have a better life. And are they aware of the circumstances? Do you think like a lot of those families, like do they know that their kid's going to be basically, yeah, like prostituted.
You know what my impression is that this is like the depth of human desperation.
Yeah.
And that like when you're in that kind of desperate situation, you'll do a lot of fucked up shit.
Yeah.
It's kind of like some of the stuff you hear about in North Korea, where it's like people just there's no such thing as like human empathy when you're in a perpetual state of starving.
Yeah.
You know?
The other question I always wonder is like, are they selling like their only child, or is it like that they've got a lot of kids and they're like, look, if we sell this one kid, our other children won't starve to death. So it's that weird fucked up thing of the end justifies the means for the sake of the majority of their. Again, these are all really complicated things.
Exactly.
I'd be interested to watch the movie just to see if they dive into any of those elements.
Well, Sound of Freedom doesn't.
Okay.
And that was like one of my criticisms of the movie is I'm like, I think that human trafficking and sex trafficking is much more complicated than they kind of make it out to be. I mean, maybe they're exploring like one dimension of it, but I just think there's all this other stuff that's going on that's worth touching upon as well.
Like, I guess I wonder, like, does all human trafficking resort to sex work, or does some of it like lead to labor, I was going to say, and just kind of almost being more like just like a slave. But because again, for some of these families, I could see for some of those families being like, oh, he's just going to be put to work all the time. Well, that's life. You know what I mean? Like, well, I think while you and me, like, we're much more disturbed by the sex trafficking. I mean, it's all disturbing, but I could see how if you and me came from a third world country, the idea of our child
being taken away to work in a sweatshop is not like
it's kind of like, oh, well, like, you know what I mean? Like, we have a lot of like parents who even have like their own mentality, just like, hey man, fucking work is work. You gotta do what you gotta do. Right. And so these people just might have like, again, it's like when you just come from that much more of a brutal life experience, you've just got these like lower standards in general, right?
Yeah. It could be something like that.
Like they might just think, well, you know what? That's still better than if they stayed with us. Well, they will just starve to death, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe they're just looking at it as in like, hey, we saved our kid's life by selling them. Yeah. I don't know. It's, and then maybe just some people just truly just don't give a fuck about their kids, maybe. But it's,
well, again, I think it comes more from like, it speaks more to the volume of
just kind of
human
exploiting
desperation.
Yeah.
And being like in such a bad situation where you're like, I was going to add, I think that my impression was that some people would like have kids to sell them off. Yeah. You know?
I was gonna say like I could see that. I mean, I remember there was during like the Cold War and stuff like that, there was like Russian propaganda that had to remind parents not to eat their own children because things got so bad. So it's that thing where I think we really underestimate desperation.
That's what I mean. And I like a movie that kind of touches on stuff like that rather than just kind of playing this like good guys, bad guys thing, which is really overly simplistic. Yeah.
There's like, you can have your Pixar movies, you can have your stuff that's all fluffy and cuddly. Yeah. But when you're going to deal with serious subject matter, like I want it being as intense as I can handle.
Justice, you know?
Yeah. Like I can handle more than most people. And my thing is I'm just sort of like, yeah, make it as like, don't make it over the top. Like, don't make it more brutal than reality, but get it as close to reality as you fucking can, because like, that's what I want. Like, I want to fucking, I don't want my shit sugar coated, at least not the crazy negative, intense stuff and stuff that's like historically real and accurate. I'm like, show me I think that was a big part of what people liked about Game of Thrones was the brutality of it. Even though it was a fantasy show, they were like, it's fantasy, but it's they're like, this is more real than a lot of historical things that sugarcoat things. Yeah. And it's like, in one end, it's really fucked up, but it also lets you appreciate that those aren't times you're living in anymore. And, so.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And maybe helps you to like, be like, hey, we gotta hang on to what we've got. Like, let's not let things slip into chaos.
Absolutely. Yeah. Should we go into Nosferatu a bit?
Yeah, we might as well.
So, we went to see this one together. I wasn't sure what my thoughts were coming out of it. And I basically, when you and me came out of the theater, we sat down on a couch and we started talking about the Sex Pistols show, which I think says a lot about maybe what our feelings were to the movie. I think the movie has great cinematography and cost. Like I really love the look of it.
It's very like raw and like, so this is actually one of the things that Robert Eggers does really well, is he captures that kind of like raw, I'm trying to think of a better word, just like grittiness.
Yeah, well, he doesn't, he never tries to modernize anything to make it easier for like the audiences. Like he wants it to be as much of like the period as he can.
Again, it's weird because like in the case with him and also Sean Baker, there's sort of a realness that he kind of captures there. That's kind of what I mean by like the rawness and the and the grittiness and stuff. It's like it's just he does it in kind of more of a fantasy setting, which is actually quite interesting. You know, like he did it with The Witch in making that just a movie that's, I hate to use the word because I think it's overused, but visceral. It's like he's kind of touching on a lot of the senses, you know?
He's really good at sort of holding back just enough to make it the most effective, as opposed to where other filmmakers, especially like young filmmakers, like,
sorry, I don't think I used that word properly.
What, visceral?
By the way. Yeah, I don't think so. But
whatever. I think The Witch was fairly visceral.
I don't think it means what I was trying to get.
Oh, okay.
Whatever. Carry on with your point.
The thing I would say actually about The Witch is that it's got this nice pacing where most of the movie is fairly kind of quiet and slow, but then these visceral moments happen and they really hit you. Like I always think about, I just call it the baby goulash sequence, where early on in the movie, the baby gets stolen by the witch, which that in its own is a pretty visceral. I don't know if you remember, the girl's doing kind of a peekaboo game with her like little brother or sister or whatever, and then just instantly she does like the peekaboo and the baby's just gone. And that's kind of really, that's the first moment the movie really starts, where you're like, okay, now you're in a horror movie. And again, like they could have, I don't know, you could have done some crazy camera works, and like it's probably one of those movies where actually I think it's like it's low budget really helped that movie, because it's not very showy, is that the word I want to say? Or flashy. It's not a very flashy movie. It really kind of holds back, and that's what makes the movie so creepy, is that it's kind of subtle and not showing a whole lot, and you have to kind of fill in the blanks. But there is a part early on where you're like, well, what happened? What did she do with the baby? And you don't see the baby get killed, but you do just see her like just smashing this like stump and making the baby goulash and then like covering herself in it. And I was just sort of like, okay, the movie's going there. This is, because that's like that's kind of a horror rule breaking, is that, you know, you kind of, you're not really, these aren't rules, but when a movie decides to kill the pet or like the baby or child, then you're like, okay, all rules are off. This movie,
no bar is held.
Anything could happen after that. And I mean, I don't know, man, to be honest, The Witch might actually still be my favorite Robert Eggers movie.
It is for me. It is for me, for sure.
And I also really like The Lighthouse. I weirdly kind of think Robert Eggers is actually better. I think I sort of prefer his original works to his adaptations, actually.
Well, I usually prefer that in general, because I just think it's more interesting. It's like, okay, give me something. Like, if you're an artist, tell me a new story. You know? And that's one of the things. So earlier you were saying, you're like, I don't know if maybe I just don't like Dune or whatever. I kind of think maybe I just don't like Nosferatu that much, because I tried watching the one that was by
the Herzog one.
Yeah. And it just kind of like, you know, it's a pretty slow burn. It does kind of like hypnotize you, and I don't know. I just don't find it that captivating.
Yeah.
But I like a lot of the iconic imagery and stuff. I think that design of that character is really cool, which leads me back to this Nosferatu. I did not like that mustache.
No, I
don't like the
didn't.
design of the Nosferatu character, even though like the effects and the makeup and all that stuff is really, really well done. The ambiance and the cinematography and stuff really good, and I gotta give it a lot of praise for that artistry, but I don't like that design.
No, I appreciate where like Robert Eggers is coming from. Like I can understand his thought process in that it does make sense to give him the mustache, but it completely takes away from the terrifying look of what Nosferatu is supposed to bring. And I think like they wasted is it Bill Skarsgård, or was that the guy we were talking about?
I always mix him up with somebody else, so let me just double check.
Yeah, but the actor who who
oh, Nicholas Hoult.
No. Nicholas Hoult plays Jonathan Harker. I'm talking about the actor who plays Nosferatu.
Oh, it was Bill Skarsgård.
Oh,
yeah,
okay. It was just it was a waste in casting him. I mean, I think I'm not the biggest fan of his of those of the It reboot movies, but I think he was a great Pennywise, and I think that was a large part of why he was cast as Nosferatu. I know at one point he was actually considered, they were originally considering him for Jonathan Harker, and then they made him Nosferatu instead.
Oh, okay.
But you just don't see any of Bill Skarsgård in the performance, and I think not only is it the heavy prosthetics, but then you throw that big bushy mustache on top of it, and it's just one extra element that also then hides a big part of his performance. Where if that mustache was gone, you'd be able to just see you'd be seeing a lot more articulation in his features, and even if he was still just staring at you, like, I don't know, you'd be able to see the face. And maybe that's just me too used to the two previous Nosferatu looks. But to me, I'm like, that's what Nosferatu, I almost feel like Robert Eggers, like it was too hard for him to decide. Like, he's like, am I making a Nosferatu movie or am I making a Dracula movie? Because Dracula is described as having a mustache. And I think that was also part of his, like, argument for that. But I was like, this is Nosferatu. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I would have much preferred to see
I think it would have been scarier, you know.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I feel that way too.
I know there was a lot of people who were making jokes about how they thought Nosferatu just looked like a boat. Like, and I kind of know what they mean. Like, he kind of looks like an upright canoe. Like, if it's in the dark and the shadows, you just kind of see this like canoe that's upright. And even when you do see him, like, I was almost like, you could have just had a cardboard cutout, like a life-size photo of Bill Skarsgård as Nosferatu, and you just stick it in the corner, and it wouldn't have looked that different than what they actually did. Other than like the very end, where you do kind of, you get a good look at him, especially when the sunlight, hits him and everything. Like they it's like they were kind of saving everything for that last moment. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. And weirdly, the movie's much more of like almost like a possession film. It's mostly like a Lily Rose Depp being possessed by Dracula, being horny and possessed.
Right.
Yeah,
totally. I mean, how does that actually compare to the Herzog film? Because I'm not super familiar with
They definitely don't do. There's definitely in the Herzog one, they definitely play into that. There's sort of a bit of a psychic link between Mina and Nosferatu, in that she's kind of having nightmares that she wakes up to, and she just kind of has this foreboding feeling like something's coming for her. Okay. But that's about it. Yeah, there's no like possession or her like convulsing and stuff like that, and it's not even. And they don't go for the sort of like horny. It's not this like Nosferatu's horny and Mina's horny and they need to fuck. It's sort of implied, but that the sexuality is all in the blood sucking. It's like, I think Klaus Kinski, he like when he's like when in the Herzog movie, he's kind of grabbing her tit while he's like sucking on her neck.
Okay.
That's like the closest to anything kind of sexual with that Nosferatu in that movie. Like he's really not meant to be sexy at all. He's meant to be this like rotting corpse.
Okay.
Like
gotcha.
in the earlier movies. And I almost felt like that this movie, they went a little bit too much into the Bram Stoker, the Francis Ford Coppola movie, where they were like, the Francis Ford Coppola one does it. And then there's also a late 70s Frank Langella Dracula. Whenever they go and try to make it a love story, I kind of tune out. Like I really like the Bram Stoker movie. So that one I feel maybe did it the best, but yeah, when you just try to make it like a thinly disguised love story, I kind of tune out. I'm like, guys, this is like supposed to be like a classic horror. Don't turn it into a chick flick.
Well,
please.
and there can be like an element of romance to that.
Sure.
Like I don't mind that.
Well, and
that
that's
can kind of add to the horror in some ways, and that it's like this kind of fucked up thing. But
yeah, well, I feel like the Bram Stoker one, I felt kind of pulled it off because they were still willing to make Dracula like ugly at times. There's old Dracula, there's Wolfman Dracula, there's like the Bat Dracula, and then there's also kind of sexy young mustachioed like Gary Oldman Dracula.
Yeah.
So like I don't know, it's the love story part of Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula is my least favorite part of it. I mean, I guess you could say maybe the Keanu Reeves is maybe the least favorite part of it, but the love story stuff, you're just kind of like, just like pull back a little bit there. But at least at that point, we hadn't seen a lot of romantic Draculas. There was like the 70s one was the only one I could think of at that point. So Coppola was maybe like, oh, we're going to tap a little bit into that. But now I'm like, now that we've had a number of those movies, I'm like, stop doing the like love story Dracula.
Yeah.
It's not a love story.
What about Dracula Dead and Loving It?
Oh, I love Dracula Dead and Loving It.
The romance and that was fantastic.
Well, see, and that one was just playing into all of the Dracula movies, including the Francis Ford Coppola one.
Yeah.
But that movie goes for comedy first,
Right.
maybe love story second, and then scares third, if you even want to go there. But so you've seen Dracula Dead and Loving It?
I did watch it. This past like Halloween.
Did you watch it before? Because I talked about it briefly on one of the comedy horror podcasts. That was the reason
that I watched it was because we talked about it, and then so I've seen it.
I love Renfield. That might be my favorite Renfield in Dracula Dead and Loving It. No, that movie gets a bad rap because it gets compared to Young Frankenstein. But
and to me, it wasn't as funny as a lot of Leslie Nielsen comedies. Some of his better ones. Yeah. But you know, I mean, I still got a kick out of it.
Yeah. But I don't know. Overall, I guess I got to rewatch that new Nosferatu. But the more time that goes by, the more I'm kind of like, I was kind of a bit disappointed with it.
Yeah. The main thing that I like about it really is the aesthetic.
Yeah.
And like, it's beautiful to look at.
I think Nicholas Hoult was actually quite good. Maybe that's again because I'm comparing him to how terrible Keanu Reeves was as Jonathan Harker. But Nicholas Hoult was a really good Jonathan Harker.
Yeah. And see, Nicholas Hoult is like finally looking like an adult because I've always felt like he's had this very boyish kind of look, and he's like finally aging into a place where I can. We've been watching
him grow up, right? And the other funny thing about that is. I'm trying to think, like, what's the best way I can make this connection here? So Anya Taylor, is it Anya Taylor-Joy? I believe is her name.
Yep.
So she almost got the role of Mina.
Well, she worked in The Northman
and The Witch.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that was like her breakthrough movie. Yeah.
Right.
And then the other funny thing is that her and Nicholas Hoult did a really incredible movie a few years ago called The Menu. But they're also both connected to the Mad Max universe in that she's the young Furiosa, and he was the main war boy in
Fury Road.
In Fury Road. Yeah. So it would have been interesting seeing Anya Taylor-Joy in that role.
Yeah.
But I guess it scheduling conflict or something. I'm guessing. Yeah.
I do sort of think like Lily Rose Depp. It's nice when a director doesn't just use the same actors over and over again. I kind of think, and I think like Lily Rose Depp has sort of more this, I don't know if I want to call it like an innocent sort of look to
Well,
her, whereas or more of like a fragile look, because to me, Anya Taylor-Joy, she's very like ethereal, you know.
I mean, I think both of them have freaky heads. Like both of them, there's something like weird there.
But Anya Taylor-Joy kind of has like that Kate Blanchett quality, where she's not like this like delicate beauty, this very feminine delicate beauty. Like she's feminine, but again, it's more than this like angelic kind of ethereal type of thing.
Lily Rose Depp kind of looks like what if you were to draw if a character sketch artist drew a caricature of Natalie Portman. Lily Rose Depp kind of looks like the reality of what that caricature drawing
it's funny
would maybe look like. I don't know. It's,
I think I saw a photo of her a little while ago and I was like, is that Natalie Portman? I had to do a bit of a double take.
There's like similar features, but it's like they're kind of exaggerated a bit. Right. But I mean, I think that could be good because I mean, you know, that I don't know. I'm still not sold on whether she's like a good actress or she just had some really good directing. Yeah. But I mean, I actually think it's a positive for an actress to be a little bit odd looking. If you're almost too perfect,
you're gonna have some. It helps to have a bit of character, you know.
Like Christina Ricci is a perfect example of that. Where I think she's
kind of more like Christina Ricci actually. If you ask me, than
it's almost like a Christina Ricci head.
Right,
with like a Natalie Portman face kind of stamped on it.
That's pretty much exactly what it is. Yeah.
Listeners are like, what the, where is this going?
Christina Ricci was deep faking as Natalie Portman.
Oh my God. Yeah. Somebody deep faked Natalie Portman on Christina Ricci. You get Lily Rose Depp. So I don't know, man. I don't. Someone's got to wonder what maybe Johnny Depp impregnated Christina Ricci on Sleepy Hollow, and we ended up with Lily Rose. Who knows?
Yeah, she does have the looks of Vanessa Paradis, though. Too.
Yeah.
Okay, the last movie on my list is Conclave. Did you watch that, or did you have any interest in that movie at all? Or
so, I haven't seen it. I'll put it this way. Originally, I had a lot more interest in The Brutalist, and as I looked more into The Brutalist, I kind of lost interest.
Oh, okay.
While the more I started looking into Conclave, I was like, oh, you know what? This actually is sort of sounding more interesting to me the more I actually hear about what the sort of premise is. But I don't fully know the premise. So the things I've heard might be very minor things about the story, or maybe they are like the actual twist of the movie. So
okay.
From my understanding, I
won't give away the twist.
Well, from
I was going to spoil
my only understanding is that it's based on a true story when they're choosing a new pope, and I think that they're considering a candidate, or maybe they've even considered their pope, but the pope turns out might actually be trans. Am I anywhere close there?
Well, it's not based on a true story.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure there's nothing.
It's just like a what if kind of scenario.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
What it is I think they're showcasing the process of electing a new pope.
Yep.
And so the movie is really like a political kind of suspense movie. I
like the cast.
I really like.
The cast looks interesting.
Great cast.
Yeah.
And I was totally engaged watching it. I actually really enjoyed the movie, and it does touch on like interesting philosophical and moral kind of topics. But do you want me to give away exactly sort of the
I
end?
just want to know.
You're sort of on the right track.
All I want to know is, would you rather sleep with Isabella Rossellini in Conclave or with Isabella Rossellini in Blue Velvet?
Definitely Conclave.
Okay,
man. I have a thing for nuns, and I just like no.
You go right for that cunt cave.
Yeah.
Although I will say this, I think Isabella Rossellini looks fucking great for her age. Like, think. I know she's old and everything now, but keep in mind, Blue Velvet was made almost 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I haven't done the math on how old she is, but she's got to be probably in her
70s. I'm sure. Yeah.
So
it looks like it to me.
Yeah, she's actually in that movie Death Becomes Her, where part of the joke is that she's a big part of the movie is like early in the movie, like they're kind of like selling a youth serum that makes you young forever, and Isabella Rossellini is like the one who sells them the serum.
Interesting.
And she looks good in that movie for sure. In fact, she looks better in that movie than Blue Velvet. But no, well, yeah, no, dude, you got to watch Death Becomes Her. Like,
I'll check that out.
It's great. Oh, I think it's one of the
comedy.
I was going to say it's a dark comedy. It's not even all that dark. It's pretty full-blown comedy, but some people would say it's like a little bit morbid just because of the death element.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, God, it almost could have been like a Tim Burton movie.
Because I think we were talking about that when we talked about, horror comedies.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Anyway,
and again, it's very much, it touches on a lot of the themes of The Substance. It just takes it in a different direction. But, and also the special effects, maybe, I don't know, nowadays, if you're watching it, a big, I don't know, Blu-ray HD version, maybe the effects won't look as good. But at the time, those were groundbreaking special effects. Like he was basically like doing stuff that was prepping him for like Forrest Gump, like leg removal and all. Actually, I'd say the stuff in Death Becomes Her is more elaborate than the later stuff he was doing effects wise. But yeah, you'll like it. It's dude, Meryl Streep, Bruce Willis, and Goldie Hawn. Like,
wow,
can't go wrong there.
It's also a stacked cast.
Yeah. But so yeah, Conclave.
Yeah. So the main premise of the movie is they're trying to elect a new pope, and it's kind of all the politics that goes on behind the scenes, and there's kind of these moral conundrums that they're confronted with.
Okay.
And at the end of the movie, you're sort of like left with this question about like.
It's a shame they didn't base it on a true story, because you'd think there's been many popes that have come and gone. Why not do one of those incidences?
Well, I think there were, for obvious reasons, when you get to the end.
Oh, okay.
So I guess I won't.
Isabella Rossellini, she reveals her penis, and they're like, "We can't elect her now."
Well, fuck. Should I just tell you?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, maybe I don't know if I will watch Conclave, to be honest. Like,
well then fuck. Let me just talk about it a little bit for the sake of this podcast.
Yeah.
Anybody who hasn't watched it, you can go watch it or not. Otherwise, we're going to talk about it. So what it is that when they get to the end of the movie, they're sort of trying to determine which pope they should elect, and this guy's like too ambitious. He's trying too hard. He's got clearly like trying to become a powerful person, and they're kind of like trying to figure out. They're going through the process of determining like who is going to be like the best representative of the Church of God, based on like what our values are and stuff. And some people are a little too politically motivated and ambitious, and other people are too maybe like personally motivated, and other people are corrupt in other ways. And Ralph Fiennes' character is like, really, to me, I'm like, oh man, this guy is like clearly the right guy to be the Pope. He's got the right kind of mindset and philosophy, and he like is kind of not wanting the position. But then there's this other guy who he's kind of constantly grappling. He's kind of grappling with who he should vote for the next pope. And then later on, by the end of the movie, that same man, this kind of guy who's like not a contender, through, the merits of the principle that he kind of demonstrates, all the other cardinals end up voting for him. And then he kind of becomes like the surprise elected pope.
Yeah, and this would be the Ralph Fiennes character, right?
No.
Oh.
Ralph Fiennes was kind of like looking like he was going to be the contender, but then it's sort of the surprise is, it's this other guy who like ends up getting voted for. And then, so they're like, oh, yes, he's this very good man or whatever. He gets, sworn in as pope or whatever. And then like some documents are kind of dropped in Ralph Fiennes' lap, and it's sort of like, what is this? And he goes and confronts the guy, and he's like, what is this thing that's going on with you? Like, you have to tell me about your situation. And the guy reveals that he was basically a hermaphrodite. He has both female and male sex organs. And
is this the person that Ralph Fiennes was rooting for to to get.
Yeah, well, he's the guy who gets elected.
Oh, okay.
So it's the Pope that they've all now elected based on, like his demonstration of principle and whatnot and merit. They've all voted for him. He gets elected, and then it is revealed that he, has both male and female sex organs.
Okay.
And then he like reveals that he was, had gone to this hospital and was considering getting like some of those sex organs removed so that he could like be one or the other, but never went through with the procedure. And so he's still just kind of as he is. And he's sort of like, I like was like, well, what should I do? Should I have this part of myself removed, or should I exist the way God made me, basically? And so the movie kind of leaves you like with this moral quandary where you're like, well, like, do we let this half man, half woman become Pope? He demonstrated like that he had the right qualities and stuff, but yet he had these this physical condition,
Yeah.
So
see, my moral quandary, it would be totally different if this was based on a true event, but because it's not, my moral quandary would be, did this movie get made and get nominated? Because again, it's just a kind of a great way to kind of throw the sort of like the trans sort of hermaphrodite agenda at us. Like just again, another
right, just because it sort of tries
checked.
to.
Because that was kind of the impression I got when I heard about the sort of trans scenario of it. I was just sort of like, oh, really? So, okay, that explains everything. But I also thought that this was like a true story. So that's when I was like, well, okay, that holds merit because, I mean, this did happen. So that's interesting. But because it didn't happen, this just sounds like a whole lot of fucking propaganda.
Well, I don't know if I would say, like, if I would definitely paint it as propaganda, but I would paint it as, like, it's trying to throw this moral conundrum in your face, for sure. And but I mean, hey, fair enough.
But I guess what I'm wondering is though, like, and this is like I guess like an honest question is, if there wasn't that hermaphroditic element, would Conclave even be eligible for the Oscars?
Oh, I doubt it.
Yeah,
but that's also partially what makes the movie kind of gives it. I mean, well, let me think about that for a second. That's not the only substance that's there. I think if it didn't have that whole hermaphrodite thing, there's still a lot of merit in the movie just for like showcasing this selection of the Pope and, why they selected this person over other people. And there's still all the political intrigue and stuff that makes it entertaining. But it would be lacking sort of a dimension of, the final moral dilemma, I guess. Yeah,
like I guess I'm just curious why this scenario was like made if there was like never anything close to it before. Like that's where I'm kind of like, if there was, even if it's not based on a true story, but if there was like sort of an element that inspired it, I guess I could kind of be like, okay. But when you take that element out of it, it kind of just, I don't know, the way I see it, I just kind of picture like the writer's room. It's like, hey, what if we make it a hermaphrodite, and that's where I guess that's where I tune out a bit. I mean, I would obviously be much more interested in watching this.
How could we be provocative to the Catholic Church?
Well, just because it's like, how many movies have we had about the process of electing a pope in general, right? Like, if we haven't really had any, why make the first one like, I don't know. It's just, it's that thing again where my heart goes out to hermaphrodites and intersex people. That's really a whole other thing than the trans thing, but it's also ridiculously rare. And I guess obviously so rare, which is why it's never really even been dealt with in this sort of a Pope scenario before. And again, it's not that it's not like possible, but it's like, I don't know. What are we doing? Like, what are we doing here? Like, this movie would not have this movie would not have been made 10 years ago. So, like, I know why it's been made now, but I just feel, I don't know. There's something about that aspect that just kind of, and I guess I got to see the movie to really truly decide. But
yeah, I mean,
that just seems like,
I don't know that you'd take a whole lot more away from it from what I just told you, but yeah, I mean, that's basically what it is. Did it almost,
here's a question I guess I have is, did the movie seem like it was, and like, I mean, being a Hollywood movie, I feel like I know the answer, but maybe not. Like, at the end of the day, was this a movie that was probably pro-religion or anti-religion?
Interesting question. I have to think about that. I was going to add, though, for a minute that actually, some of the themes that I'm maybe not fully expressing are things related to faith and doubt and the validity of doubt. To like there's some really good lines in there that Ray Fiennes' character has, which I actually that actually resonate with me quite a bit. Kind of these like principles about like the value of faith, and also kind of constantly questioning things and being sort of in a state of re-evaluating our morals and principles, I guess. So which I think has definitely got validity.
Can I ask you this question? Is I know like not all movies have villains, but most movies there's usually like an antagonist. Would you say that Ray Fiennes is the antagonist of the movie?
No.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't say so.
Okay. Well, that's good at least. If because that's sometimes where I'm like, oh, wow, the person whose character I resonate the most, who said all the inspiring things, is the villain of the movie. Which I'm glad to hear that that's not the case with Ray Fiennes. But I was kind of worried that maybe that like all of his words of wisdoms were like maybe done in a lighting where they were like, and he's wrong.
Okay. No, it wasn't like that.
Okay.
And in terms of like, is it more pro? You were asking, is it pro religion or anti religion?
Yeah. I know like the tagline. The tagline was almost like, "This ain't your grandmother's religious film," or I don't know. It was something. It was something like it was something on that level of just sort of like, "This ain't what you think it is, folks."
Okay.
And so I was just kind of like, well, it's a Hollywood movie, like nominated for a bunch of Oscars. My guess was that it would be an anti-religious movie, but again, like I mean, I could be. I totally
feel like
most
whenever I see a movie that's like about the Catholic Church, it tends to take a pretty cynical view of like the Catholic Church as an organization, and I think there's an element of that in this movie, and that it's kind of like,
what was that one that came out there was the Oscar one a few years ago. I think it was called Doubt. Right? Was that the name of it?
I don't know what that movie was.
Oh, I didn't see it.
There was like the two popes that had
right.
It was it had Anthony Hopkins in it, and I always forget that other fella's name. Jonathan. Well, his name is Jonathan.
Okay, yeah. It's like Cher. He's like the Jonathan. I think Doubt came out a little bit before the two popes. And again, these are
Jonathan Pryce.
Oh, I should have known when you were saying that movie. Yeah, of course, Jonathan Pryce. Yeah. No, I don't know. Most of the, I mean, Hollywood hates religion, especially Christianity. So that's where I'm kind of like,
they tend to sort
I would
of shy
imagine
away from
this
it
is
unless
not,
unless they're critiquing it. It seems. But I don't know. I didn't get the sense that it was like super anti-religion, although like the Catholic Church and Catholics, the kind of prominent voices within the Catholic Church had kind of condemned this movie and said like, yeah, don't watch this. It's not like. But you know, they said the same feeling. They said the same thing about Last Temptation of Christ.
Sure,
right?
They don't even watch the movies, so you can't even. You know what I mean? Like, these movies that they protest, they don't watch usually.
I think this particular like bishop had watched the movie and said like, don't watch it.
Yeah.
I could see them kind of considering it disrespectful or blasphemous or something. But
and I don't even mind movies that are anti. I'm not actually religious myself. I just it's the propaganda element where I'm like, if like criticize it from the right. There's like a right way and wrong way to like criticize truth, but don't don't make stuff up.
That's where I don't feel like this movie was being too heavy-handed in terms of being like condemning of the Catholic Church. That wasn't the impression that I got at all.
Yeah.
but you know, it does kind of put you in this like moral quandary where it's uncomfortable and kind of weird.
Do you know, was the director anyone noteworthy?
Good question. Edward Berger. Oh yeah, right. This was the guy who actually made he made All Quiet on the Western Front.
Oh, yeah, we watched that one together.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and honestly, like I feel like it's a like I don't interpret this movie as being a movie that's like made with some nefarious intent, I guess, or like some made from a place of disrespect or wanting to like shit on.
Oh, that was complete. That was completely my assumption, but that wasn't based on anything other than how I know Hollywood views religion. Right. But yeah, like again, I gotta watch it just to find out. But I just when I see a religious movie getting nominated, it's usually not a good sign that it's going to be a positive film. But hey, that's great. That's great to know that, like.
Yeah, I mean, you should check it out still. I really enjoyed it. Like, again, I found it even just from a perspective of being entertained by like the political intrigue. Mm-hmm. It's a very beautiful looking film, like just in terms of the color, the cinematography. A lot of it takes place in the Sistine Chapel, which they rebuilt the Sistine Chapel painstakingly. They had Michelangelo actually come in and redo the painting. No, okay, that's a joke.
But what was I going to say there? Yeah. Yeah, no. Yeah, I'll check it out. I do like I like Ray Fiennes. That movie I was bringing up earlier, The Menu, with Nicholas Hoult and Anya Taylor-Joy. Ray Fiennes is the antagonist in that movie, and it's just a very well written movie. I don't know. Yeah. I had like no expectations, but I was just sort of like, that was a movie that would never get Oscar nominations, but I was like, it was worthy of like top 5. I felt that year.
I gotta check that one out too. I really do like him as an actor, and I mean, he's done so many great performances and stuff over the years. I really like Stanley Tucci as well.
Is Stanley Tucci in it? Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of Stanley Tucci. Yeah,
he's awesome. Who's the other guy? John Lithgow.
That's why John Lithgow was at the Oscars.
Yeah.
Okay.
So John Lithgow is kind of if anybody's sort of. Fuck, I don't want to give things away.
No, it's okay. You know, we'll move away from Conclave. I want to just say like a few, because I kind of shat on the Oscars, and I want to like just highlight a few sort of positive things I felt from it. There were, I still enjoyed Conan O'Brien's hosting. One of the things that I did like was there was, I don't know which Sean Baker interview it was, or which speech it was, but there was a few speeches that night kind of really trying to promote the cinema and like going to the movies. And then he also did another speech about just supporting independent film, and there should be more independent film. And
the speech was specifically why I went to the movie theater to see Anora, actually.
Good for you. Yeah. Fair enough,
I was
man.
like, you know what? Yeah. I appreciate what he's talking about here, and I very much resonate with that too.
Yeah. So there was definitely some like inspirational stuff that night that that I tried to like sort of like, you know, focus on more so. And I mean, whether like that was just like, you know, words said on deaf ears, like I really, it's hard. I don't think there is going to really be a comeback. Like, as much as people want to like make the speeches, like I don't think we're going to just start seeing people piling up for the movie theaters, but it would be nice. It would also be nice if just more kind of indie films start getting like represented more at the Oscars. Maybe this might be a new era where they might maybe start doing that more.
I will say this though too, like when Son and I went to The Brutalist the other night, I mean, in spite of the fact that it's been out for a while, it was like a full movie theater.
Right. Yeah. So, well, because I think a lot of those movies ended up leaving the theater, and then after the Oscars they have like a resurgence, right?
Yeah, I think that was kind of it.
I don't even know if Anora was able to be seen in the theaters when I watched it, because it was at the time it wasn't trying to be this Oscar movie. I think it had like a very limited release, didn't really do all that crazy, and then
Did
like
you
immediately
hear
went
about it
streaming.
because you'd been following Sean Baker's career, or how did you?
Yeah, I was basically, I don't know how I found out, but I was just like, oh, this is the new Sean Baker movie. Okay, I'll check it out.
Cool.
Yeah, that's, and it was getting some pretty good reviews. So like I was like kind of like, oh, okay. But yeah, like I watched Anora back like kind of like around the same time I saw probably like The Substance, which would probably been like back in like October.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of any other. I did like the John Lithgow little moment from the Oscars. I wish they like actually like lived up to it. Like I actually would have liked to have seen like John Lithgow actually do some disappointing face expressions, like when people went overboard. Right. Oh, maybe we should talk about that. Like, hey, let's talk about all of like the fucking washed up, trashed old Hollywood stars who were cringy that night. I'm looking at you, Goldie Hawn and Mark Hamill. There was others, but those were the ones where I was just like, oh man, what the fuck? Like you guys aren't even relevant anymore. You can't even be sober on, I mean, I don't know what Goldie's issue was. I think she was like actually on drugs, like, and it might've been drugs maybe she needed to be on at her age. But Mark Hamill, holy fuck.
He seemed like he wasn't in good shape, that's for sure.
He seemed drunk, and I know he's like battled alcoholism for like a large part of his
career. Right?
Yeah. It's pretty like bad and well known with him. But I was like, you couldn't keep your shit together for just like I don't know, like the 2 minutes you have to present and then just jump on the booze after that, you know? I'm trying to think, was there anybody else that was really...
Yeah, save it for the after party, right?
Yeah. When nobody, luckily not a lot of people watch him anymore, but
maybe he was trying to like cramp his stage nerves. I don't know. That's probably.
I'm sure that was part of. I would hope that was the reason. Man, yeah, I'm trying to think. Was there any other kind of nice little? I like surprises from the show.
I know we always talk about like the in memoriam things. Yeah. I do like watching that. It always kind of makes me feel like this nice sort of celebration of cinema.
Yeah, I mean,
there was a few notable faces on there that I didn't even know had passed away.
Yeah, me too. Maybe I heard and just forgot about them. But yeah, there was some I was really just like, what? That person died? Obviously being a little bit biased, I guess I was a little bit disappointed that there wasn't more of like a spotlight on like David Lynch, but you know, I have to accept that, like, you know, he got a lot of praise after his death, but while he was alive, he was a pretty polarizing filmmaker. I kind of get that he didn't get like his own little moment. Basically, I feel like Isabella Rossellini and Laura Dern being there and being in like Isabella being in the blue velvet dress, I'm like, okay, that's enough of a tribute for me.
That was a pretty notable tribute.
Yeah. But yeah, no, other than that, I'm trying to think if there was any other kind of real highlights. Like it was a pretty, I think again, after the Will Smith slap, I think they're trying to just go for like nothing controversial or crazy.
Yeah. I did like that James Bond tribute actually with like the little medley of songs.
Yeah, that was actually
it's really nice, like visually and stuff. And actually really great.
I almost didn't want to like it, but almost couldn't help myself. But because I was kind of like,
I was actually at work when that was happening, and I was like, you know, serving tables and stuff, and then I looked up at the screen and I'm like, damn, that's like a really good
Were you getting the audio though too? Like, did you hear the song?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
they
good.
had it
that's
on the
good.
TVs. There, I was actually like serving there was an Oscar party that was going on at the time, and so I was kind of serving all these people, and then
they chose they chose like some like the best. Yeah, they chose like the best songs. Like they chose, I think it was like 2 Shirley Bassey songs, then they finished it with the Adele one.
Yeah,
and really like that's one of my favorites.
Did they do "Live and Let Die"? I feel like
did they do "Live and Let Die"?
They did "Goldfinger."
Goldfinger, "Diamonds Are Forever."
Oh yeah, "Diamonds Are Forever."
Those are both Shirley Bassey
and then
songs.
I thought they had "Live and Let Die" in there, and then the Adele.
It's possible.
Yeah. Pretty sure.
It just seems like that would have been like a really crazy number, like just because the way that song is, it would have just been this like other thing.
I think it was in the medley,
but yeah,
maybe they didn't do "Goldeneye" or Goldfinger.
I feel like
no, they totally did.
I feel like they did.
Goldfinger.
And like again, like Diamonds Are Forever. It's not even like the greatest Bond movie, but that's a great like.
Yeah.
Like if Shirley Bassey did all of the theme songs, I'd be like, yeah, that's fine.
I used to freaking hate Shirley Bassey's voice, but it's really grown on me. I'm like, she's just got such a powerful fucking voice.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. It's yeah, but I know what you mean. Like when I was younger, I was kind of like. I don't know about this.
Like, what is this Moonraker? This is like the shittiest song.
Oh, did she do the Moonraker one?
I think so.
Yeah. You know what? I think you're right.
Did she? Hold on.
It's just like a more mellow. Because I know she did 3, but that's almost like the one song where she doesn't really belt it out like the other 2, which is why I forget.
More this ballad.
Yeah.
Yep. Shirley Bassey.
Yeah.
Bassey.
Yeah, no, to this day, I do not know if it's Bassey or Bassey. Like, they both seem right to me. Like,
I always called it Bassey.
Yeah. Because she's got all that bass.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Oh, man, maybe that should be like a future podcast episode. We should go through the Bond franchise.
That would be something, because there's still a bunch that I haven't watched.
There's a few I haven't seen at this point. Like, there was a long period I'd seen them all, and then I lost track with a couple of those... Who's the last Bond?
Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig. I don't know why I was blanking out there, but yeah, I never saw the last 2 Daniel Craig ones.
Oh, okay.
Which ones have you not seen? Do you?
I haven't seen like a bunch of the earlier ones.
Yeah. And there's also kind of like freaky ones that aren't even like in the franchise, like Never Say Never Again.
Yeah. Right. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen the one with George Lazenby.
Oh, that's actually quite a. If it
Her
was
Majesty's Secret Service.
Yeah, if that movie starred Sean Connery, that would have been the best Sean Connery Bond film. I think it would have. Yeah. Yeah. It's just unfortunate that it was Lazenby. But did you see most of the Roger Moore ones?
No, probably only like 2 or 3.
Okay, he's got some like his are definitely like the most kind of like cartoony, but there's some good ones in there. I particularly like Live and Let Die and The Spy Who Loved Me.
Well, you see, the thing is, too, is like,
yeah.
Some of those, like I started watching them and then like didn't get through them all, so I've like seen parts of them, and then so I'm kind of like, oh, which ones have I actually seen the full thing of them?
Yeah, and I think it gets harder the older you get. Like you really do want to watch them all when you're pretty young, because then when you get older, you look back and you're like, the action hasn't aged that well, and it's also like just kind of really cheesy and corny.
Yeah.
But and just also you're just kind of like after a certain while you're like, yes, they're very formulaic. But yeah, like there's a weird pattern where it's usually like one's gonna if the one movie sucks, they'll try to sort of make up with it with the following movie, and then with the success of that movie, they'll allow the next one to suck. Yeah,
it's kind of the way that it's gone with the Daniel Craig movies too. It's like Casino Royale was fucking great.
Yeah,
and then Quantum of Solace like was a little bit of a downer.
And Skyfall was
really good.
Yeah,
and then the
Spectre was kind of
like bad. It was pretty bad actually. Probably worse. Than
I couldn't like that was the thing was like I started Spectre. And I was just like, what's going on here? Like, I want to just turn this off. And I did. And like, I'll have to go back to it at some point if I want to finish it off. I also heard not that many great things about the last one.
No Time to Die. Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched that at a friend's house, but again, I think I was like dozing off and I don't remember it very well. So
yeah, I'm personally not.
I love Bond, but I just kind of like tuned out a little bit, and I just hung up on the ones that I really like, you know? I'm not the biggest. I actually like Daniel Craig more when he's not Bond. Like in the stuff I've seen that's not Bond related, I just don't. I've accepted him as Bond now, but I'm just sort of like, I feel like anybody could have been in the recent Bond movies, and they probably would have been just as good, maybe even a little bit better. Like I don't feel that Daniel Craig is what makes those movies good. Okay. I actually really do like him as Bond, like, but especially just I really love him in Casino Royale, especially. I don't know, that movie was like really fucking good.
Well, that's the thing is, it's Casino Royale was directed by the same guy who did GoldenEye.
I know, and those are my two favorite Bond movies.
But that's the thing is, like, this is what I mean about how it's not accidental. They were like, oh, it's a new Bond. It has to be good.
Yeah.
Which means Quantum of Solace is allowed to suck. Like, it's just the fact that I know that all of the Bond movies could, like, they know how to make a good Bond movie.
Yeah.
They literally like choose and maybe there's something smart about like, well, if we make everyone good, we have to just keep topping ourselves. So let's do a shitty one so that the next one will automatically be loved because it'll be compared to the shit. But I'm like, why are you not getting that GoldenEye director to direct all your Bond movies? He clearly knows what he's doing. But they're like, no, we only get him back when it's a new Bond because that first one has to do well.
Yeah.
Then they can start sucking.
I know they keep on talking about Christopher Nolan doing a Bond movie.
Yeah.
I'm really curious if
I would love it.
I'd love to see it out of curiosity. I'm curious what that would be like, really.
Well, here's the weird thing is they've prevented Tarantino from making a Bond film and they prevented Steven Spielberg from making a Bond film. So I think that they're like these weird people where they actually almost don't want a masterpiece of a film. They almost want like a consistently, they want it consistent, and the consistency is kind of like good and bad back and forth. But like anytime like a real director really wants to step in, like a director who's a fan of the franchise and is like probably willing to take a pay cut and everything, they're just like, no, this is our franchise.
Yeah. Well, they did give it to Danny Boyle.
Oh, which one did he do?
Didn't they? Hold on. I thought
you might be right about that. I'm curious which one.
Which one was
he
it?
did.
Did he do Spectre? No, that was too shitty to be a Danny Boyle.
That would be weird if he did Spectre, because like Danny Boyle's like almost all of his movies are great. Unless he like, did he like possibly produce like a Bond film?
No, I'm certain he directed one. Gotta look it up. The hell? No.
Is it possible that he did one of the Pierce Brosnan movies?
No.
Okay.
It was like gonna be a recent one. What the fuck? I swore to
Are you
God,
sure you're not?
dude,
Maybe you're confusing with that other guy. The guy who did American Beauty. Didn't he do a couple of Bond films?
Oh, what? Oh, maybe. What the? Yeah. I think
he did Casino Royale, and he did another one. Maybe Spectre?
No, he didn't. Sam Mendes didn't do Casino Royale. Martin Campbell did Casino Royale.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the GoldenEye. Yeah. So I think he might have done. I'm thinking maybe Skyfall and Spectre, maybe, or maybe he left for a movie and came back. But
yeah. He did Skyfall. Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
So he did that.
Is that the only one though? Did they bring him back?
So.
All right.
I was sure that like Danny Boyle was doing one for some reason, but
Boyle
he did do Spectre. He did Skyfall and Spectre.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay.
Danny Boyle would probably make an amazing Bond film. Just from his just from all the stuff he does. It's just a question of, is Danny Boyle like interested in, like, does he have a Bond story he wants to tell, or is he interested enough?
The one thing is, I do feel like those movies should be kind of purely like British made.
Oh, I agree.
And so it's like you got to get like a British director. You got to get a real British
or at
star.
least the UK. Because a lot of it's
obviously
very
like,
few
Pierce
Bonds actually
was Irish. I think Connery's
Scottish. George Lazenby's Australian. So only
they've never had an English.
I think Roger Moore and Timothy Dalton, and I guess Daniel Craig.
Yeah.
Although who knows, one of those guys might be Welsh. Dun dun dun. Yeah. Actually, I think one of them actually is maybe Welsh, but I'm not sure.
Could be.
Maybe Timothy Dalton. But
but then you also I would kind of prefer to see like a British artist do the song too.
Yeah, if they could, you know what I mean? Like I think like occasionally you could strip away from that, but I'm like, if there's a really good, like, how hard is it to find, like, when is there ever an era where there's no good British musicians? I'm like, no, like, you could even bring back like even if someone's done it before, like, fuck, bring them back. Like, again, we did for Shirley Bassey. If you've got a good sound, I'd be fine if Adele did a song like that was as good as the Skyfall song.
Yeah,
I'd be fine with her coming back.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I know what you mean. There's people like I don't know. Not that I didn't hate the song, but like when Madonna did the theme song.
Oh, I didn't like that one.
No, even people like kind of like Chris Cornell, who I like Chris Cornell, and it's not a bad song, but I get what you mean, where you're like, if it was a British person, it just would have been a little bit more Bondish. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It would have just been more like that's
roots
that
it
world,
more in,
you know?
Yeah, in the British world rather than like being kind of Hollywood.
Yeah, you know who could have done a really and there's also the classic like I hate the Spectre theme song, and then knowing that they bumped Tom York the Radiohead song for what's his face is
was that Sam Smith?
Yeah. So that kind of I didn't.
Yeah,
I wasn't,
Radiohead would have been.
Yeah, and it wasn't. I wasn't even crazy about the Radiohead song, but it was better. It was definitely better.
Did you hear what it was?
Oh yeah, it's on YouTube. You can hear it.
I should check it out. So they actually recorded it for the Bond movie.
It's just like what is it? It's Spectre. It doesn't really sound like a Bond film, but but it's the Sam Smith one is so forgettable. Like that was my intro to Sam Smith, and I'm like, this guy fucking sucks.
Well, and I also I hate it when they don't use the title of the movie in the song as a lyric. I mean, okay, truth be told, I love I actually really do love that Chris Cornell song, the You Know My Name, which was for Casino Royale. Yeah. But it's like just fucking shoehorn it in there somewhere. Just say Casino Royale, damn it.
Yeah, no, totally.
Sing it somewhere in the
even
song.
like the Moonraker, they say Moonraker, The Spy Who Loved Me, because The Spy Who Loved Me, the song's not called Spy Who Loved Me, but they still insert the line in there.
Yeah, and that was what I really liked about the Adele song too, is they used, I was like, how do you write Skyfall into
it's like
song?
the best part of the song.
And then they made it, they incorporated it in a great way. Let the sky fall. Yeah. Like, I don't know.
Man, you know who would have you know who could have made like a killer Bond song is The Who.
Oh man,
that would have been interesting. Yeah,
especially if they did it like their old style, like din 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 din.
Yeah.
Well, you know it, Bond is coming into the. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, obviously they got like Paul McCartney had his. Crack at Live and Let Die, which was really good. Yeah,
Queen would have done a really interesting tune.
Good. I always thought Elton John should have done one.
Yeah. You know who even it would have been a little bit different, but like in that Pierce Brosnan era, maybe even like I don't know, like maybe Oasis. Try one. Like you'd have to think like who. I will say this for American singers, I do really like the Tina Turner Goldeneye.
Yeah, I love that, honestly. Yeah. And you know that's written by Bono.
Yeah, well, there's even a Bono version, is there not? Like, is there not a version where you hear you two do the song? Heard it. Oh, okay. I'm pretty sure there, like, it might even be in the end credits. Like, not like the opening end, like not when the end credits start, but you know, there's like always like that secondary credit song. Mm-hmm. I feel like I've heard the U2 version because I just can't buy that. Like, Bono is just sort of like, we wrote it, but we're not gonna play it ever. I'm sure he was like, they probably pitched it like with the recording. They were like, we love the song, but what if Tina Turner sings it?
Yeah, but Tina Turner is awesome.
Well, she's almost got that Shirley Bassey kind of quality.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that like our Oscar episode just turned into like James Bond for like the last like 20 minutes or whatever.
Yeah, probably. I guess we should probably wrap this up.
Yeah,
here.
We're
at about 3 hours and 36
well,
minutes.
We covered a lot of stuff, and honestly, I think there was a lot of interesting stuff said on this episode. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Actually, we might be at 4 hours and 36 minutes.
Wow.
Well, whatever.
Imagine if we kept all the pee breaks in there, eh?
Yeah, right, for sure. Yeah, it's 3 a.m., so I guess we better get going.
All right. Well,
anyway, everybody. Yeah, that was the Oscar summary.
Yeah. I guess, tune in for our next episode. 12 will be David Lynch Part 2, guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look forward to that. And, well, till next time. Have a good night.